We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com.
Welcome to another edition of AVRant. My name is Rob H, and this week I'm here with
Lee Overstreet, once again pinch hitting for AVRant, filling in for Tom, who couldn't make it this time.
Yeah, I feel bad about this one because I requested on. I sent him a text on Sunday. I was like, okay, Monday's not looking so good. It's snowing like crazy where I am. So roads are terrible in that, and I was going to be asked to do some overtime on Monday. So I'm like, okay, can we record on Tuesday? He's like, yeah, sure, that's fine, because we've been doing that quite a bit as of late, is recording on Tuesdays. But then he had an appointment on Tuesday morning that ended up going long, and I had an appointment later on Tuesday morning. But by the time Tom got back home, it was going to give us like maybe an hour, which is definitely not enough to answer all the questions that we're going to try to get to. So yeah, he was a little bit peeved because he was rushing to try and get back home. But then, it just didn't work out, and I had to be where I had to be, and I couldn't leave late because snow everywhere. So that's just the way things go. I texted Lee, he got back to me super short notice. Wednesday kind of works out, so here we are.
That's my new middle name is short notice. I love on Mondays or Tuesdays, I get that text that starts with, "Hi, Lee," and I'm like, here we go.
Yup. You can guess what's coming.
Let me go turn on the lights.
That's right. So this is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And to get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. And you can ask by sending them to our email address, which is question@avrant.com. That is definitely the best place to send your questions. Please send them there. Question@avrant.com. You can, however, get in touch with us other ways. We're on YouTube, of course, and that's youtube.com/avrant. We also have our website, which is avrant.com, and we have a Facebook page as well, which is facebook.com/avrant podcast. And you can get in touch with myself individually or Tom individually. I am rob@avrant.com for email. I am @FirstReflect on Twitter, and Tom is tom@avrant.com. He is @avrant_Tom on Twitter. And Lee Overstreet, our guest co-host, he can be reached on Twitter as well, right?
Yes, I can. I am @LeeOverTweet. My so clever Twitter handle. And people do occasionally add me, and you can always tell when it's someone that listens to AVRant that adds me or follows me, because I go to their profile and they always mention something about AV or electronics or computers, and I'm like, aha, I know where you heard about me. It's really exciting. Also, I want to thank right off the bat James.
Because he's going to be in our listeners of the week. So,
let's I guess you want to mention some Patreon information first. And we'll
For
talk
sure.
About that.
Yeah. We always start off thanking our listeners of the week. These are people who have supported our podcast in some way. Now, if you come to avrant.com and you go to the desktop version, because if you're on mobile, you do have to kind of scroll down and click the desktop version to see the link I'm going to talk about, which is over on the right-hand side, and it says support AVRant. That'll take you to PayPal, where you can use your PayPal account or just a credit card. If you don't want to sign up for a PayPal account, you can just use a credit card there to give us a one-time donation if you'd like to. I know some folks did that, but Tom has all the official names and things didn't work out. He's not here, so I don't have the names for this week. I apologize. You will be mentioned next week for sure. But that's how you can make a one-time donation. You can also, if you want to, donate on a regular monthly basis automatically by using Patreon. So that's at patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up. We have 81 patrons over there, including Bryan W, who is one of our patrons, and let us know. If you let us know, we'll mention you. So that's how that works. So thanks very much to our 81 patrons over there.
That's a good number of patrons. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, I'm always happy to see that number tick up. It's great. You know what I would love even more is like multiple people doing $1 instead of like, several people doing 10. Not that we don't appreciate the several people doing like $10 or possibly even more, but I'm like, if a whole bunch of people did $1 a month, I'd be like, that'd be so cool. But yes,
and it's okay if you're like super wealthy and want to, put like $100,000 a month on there. That's fine too. That's okay. That's allowed.
Okay. Yes.
It's a number you could use.
Lee mentioned James, and we do want to thank James because he went above and beyond. He enjoys doing what he calls his trifecta of AVRant support, which is First of all, he talked us up to Accessories for Less, which is if you don't want to support us financially or aren't able to support us financially, but you still want to support us in some way, talking us up to retailers and manufacturers that you buy stuff from is a great way to do that. Helps us out. So he talked us up to Accessories for Less. He bought some KEF LS50 speakers, which we'll hopefully get to talking about his question about that. But he's also a monthly Patreon supporter, and he gave us a one-time donation on PayPal. So that's his trifecta, but he went beyond that to a quadfectra.
A quadtrecta?
I don't know what the word is. He supported us 4 ways.
4 ways.
That's how we'll say it. And Lee can tell us about that because it involves Lee.
I feel a little guilty. I made a flippant comment about how people were getting gifts, and I'm like, well, I'm on here every now and then. My email address is leoverstreet@yahoo.com, and it's my birthday next week or something. So I had a birthday coming up. I just had a birthday several days ago.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I'm ancient. And James heard me say that, and like with his powerful hearing and memory, he wrote down my email address apparently from me just blurting it out, and he sent me a gift. He sent me an Amazon gift card. I'm like, gosh, James, thank you. It will be used. In fact, it will be used for related electronics and computer thingamajigs.
Even better.
There are some little, you know how you realize you need to buy that adapter. And you need that different cable. It sure would be nice if you had a longer cable for that thing.
Absolutely.
That's the kind of thing that's coming up for me. So thank you, James. That's just fantastic, man. And I hope we get a chance to talk about my TV adventures. You tell me when and where you might like to talk about
I absolutely want to do that. What I would like to do is get through the questions we had left over from last week, because I think that's only fair. And then we can dig into your situation, and then we'll continue on with new questions for this week.
I have OLED and LED adventures.
Lovely. Well, before we get to that, why don't we hit some news? Lee's here. We'll let Lee discuss the news.
Let's do that. Via Karl R, Sonos is teaming up with Sonance to launch their new Sonos Architectural by Sonance speaker series. There's an in-ceiling model that's $600 a pair, an in-wall model that's $600 a pair, and outdoor speakers, $800 a pair, that have been designed to work nicely with the new Sonos amp, also $600. They like that number. They can use Sonos TruePlay to EQ the sound based on measurements taken with the Sonos app on your iPhone. We're starting to put a lot of emphasis on that iPhone microphone, aren't we?
Yeah, it is being used by multiple places with apps, but of course, it's the convenient thing. Almost everybody has a smartphone. It's got a microphone built in. If you know the characteristics of that microphone, you can, do a pretty decent job of compensating for it. So that's
sure
how
you
they're
could.
coming at this.
I just worry that what if Apple or the factory that makes them in China switches to a slightly different microphone? Or, if on the next model, they got to do it again for the next model, if the little tiny hole is slightly different or the microphone is slightly positioned different, it could make a difference.
Yeah, well, the app can tell which model it's on. And you do often see this on iPhone before or more than on Android because there are just fewer iPhone models. And it's a little bit more consistent. Yeah, I mean, there's a gazillion Android phones out there. So there are apps that work with that as well. But Sonos only mentioned this working with their iPhone app. That was the way it was worded, so I assume that's the case for now. But yeah, Sonance, they basically invented the home in-ceiling speaker market. Not that they did anything particularly different from taking car audio speakers and putting them in ceilings, but they basically invented the category back a ways. So yeah, teaming up with Sonos, that's cool. And there you go. Not very terrible prices, not the best prices, of course, but should work nicely if you have a Sonos system. Yeah,
I feel like at least you're getting decent stuff.
Yes.
There's no way that's going to be bad,
that's
right? So. Yeah. That's probably not terrible pricing. Also in the news, Anthem announced their new ARC Genesis Anthem Room Correction software that'll be launching in spring of 2019. It works with existing Anthem products. It's got a new interface. It's faster. You can remeasure just one speaker at a time now instead of having to remeasure the entire system if you make a change. And it finally runs on Mac as well as Windows. So the people that have the iPhones that want the Sonance, they probably have Macs. They're also introducing a, quote, snapshot quick measurement feature so that you can overlay measurements to compare any changes you've made. So they've really upgraded that software.
Yeah, some nice quality of life stuff there. If you're into Anthem products with ARC, their Anthem Room Correction, this is, I think they said their 3rd or 4th generation of the software. But nice thing, you don't have to buy new hardware. They're like, some of the oldest hardware that only had RS-232 ports, no USB, no network connection or anything like that. Those won't work with this because this requires the newer connection to your computer. But basically everything that you probably have from Anthem, it will work. So you don't have to buy new products to use the new version of the ARC software. So that's good.
Although I think I have a serial connection on a computer in the closet. I think I do. I could pull that out from the 90s. It would be great. Let's see. Disney announced that if you want to stream Captain Marvel later this year, Disney Plus will be your only option. They expect to lose $150 million by refusing to license the streaming rights to any other services. Yeah, really? But they're saying it's an investment in their future. Well, that makes sense. It's a bit like advertising for that service. And they envision Disney Plus becoming a very important part of their business. And that, okay, it makes sense to me. I see where we're going in the future.
Yeah.
You realize what's going to happen.
This.
Well, you realize we all said, what if we could subscribe to just the individual channels that we want? And you're already to the point where you can do that with HBO and this Disney channel. And can you do it with ESPN? Or at least you're buying little packages like you find someone like Sony View or YouTube TV. And I'm telling you, it's eventually going to get to the point where everybody just sells a subscription to their channel.
Absolutely.
And
that's totally the way we're heading.
Yes. Whereas you used to surf channels on your television, now you'll just surf apps.
Yeah.
I mean, and then somebody's going to make a meta app that quickly samples all your apps that shows you samples. And now you're back to surfing channels again. We're just going to get round
not going to save anybody any money, which is what people really, when everybody said they wanted a la carte channels, what they really wanted was to pay less money.
Right.
That's
and
what it
doesn't happen. I've had conversations with people recently because I have a contract with Comcast that lasts another 14 months. And Comcast doesn't have to follow the contract, but I do. Okay. Comcast canceled my HBO.
Yes,
and you probably saw that on Twitter, what I said about it. Yeah, I was a little bit ticked.
Yeah.
and they just decided to cancel HBO, even though I have recordings of them promising me that. And there's nothing you can do about it. But I've noticed that by the time you pay for all the different channels and packages you want, you start getting close to the cost of cable television because you've got to buy the high-speed internet.
Of course.
And that's
I'm not pleased about this. I'm getting very displeased with Disney in general because, like the disc releases that they're doing on Ultra HD Blu-ray, they are ruining them. They're dynamically compressing the audio all the time.
Really?
And they refuse to put Dolby Vision on there because they're like, oh, we might want to change it later, so we'll only put Dolby Vision on the streaming version. And then they're like, but the streaming version is only going to be on our service now, and I'm like, really? You know?
Why might they want to change it later?
I don't know. They're Disney, man.
Yeah, they just think they can do it all. And frankly, for a lot of families with children that get hooked on Disney stuff, you know, they're going to pay.
Well, I mean, this is what they want. They want that control over their content because they're going to be like, okay, if you want to see Disney movies, they're only going to be on our service, and we can take it off our service so we can put things back in the Disney vault. And, you know, they're essentially ruining the physical media so that you won't even want to buy it. And I mean, I guess you can still purchase it on iTunes, right? That's... or on Vudu. So until they take that away, I guess that's your alternative. But I don't like the monopolistic thing. I don't like that.
I don't either. No. Never forget, everyone, you don't have to watch any particular thing in this world.
That's true.
And so you can always tell people to stick it.
But they know we want to watch the Marvel movies. So.
Well, I don't. I'm a weirdo. I don't. Let's see. We're into our comments at this point. And Mike H had a comment. He wanted to share a smarter everyday YouTube video that details a clever way to visualize and understand how multiple different frequencies can all be added together to create any waveform shape. Yes, I watched a video once about how like Fourier transforms are used.
That's it. Yep.
Oh my gosh, and it's fascinating, and it's so far over my head. I feel like I've sunk to the bottom of a math pool, and I'm looking up at the surface. I'm like, what did I miss in high school and college? Oh my goodness.
So the idea of it, the visualization, and what's nice is this is an animated version of it, because this is not a new idea of visualizing things this way, but it's animated in the video so you can really see it in real time, which is, imagine that each frequency that you're talking about is a circle, so a longer wavelength, a longer frequency, lower frequency would be a larger circle. So you imagine that each circle, there's a little line going around in a circle, and that's going at the same speed. So if you have a smaller circle, that'll be a higher frequency, right? It'll make it around that circle faster if it's a smaller circle. So you layer these circles as though each line is a link in a little wand with bends in it. And as you add together all these circles, you imagine that the tip of the wand at the very end is what traces out the shape of the line on the graph.
That's such a good visualization.
Yeah, so you combine all these circles of different sizes connected to each other, and the little end of the wand is whipping around in this shape, drawing the shape on the graph, which can end up being pretty much any shape that you want it to be. And then if you take that a step further and you imagine, like, you see this sort of up and down waveform that it creates on the graph paper, but then if you were to just imagine that you rotate that 90 degrees as though it's the forward and back movement, that's where you can visualize that forward and back movement. That shape on that graph is the movement of a speaker's woofer. If you were imagining how does that speaker play all these frequencies simultaneously, you add them all together, it creates this shape on the graph, and that would equal the back and forth movement of the speaker driver. That's how
I wish we had this kind of visualization capability when I was back in high school. Because trying to understand sines and cosines, and what it waveforms in general, that is so helpful. I just find that so fascinating.
So that's
very good.
Just carrying on from our conversation of how does the speaker driver play all these frequencies simultaneously? You have a multitude of voices in a choir all singing at the same time. How are we able to hear that when there's only one driver moving back and forth? But that's what it is. So it's a helpful way to visualize it. It's
nested fractal-like circles. It's fascinating.
That's right.
So thanks, Mike, for that little tidbit. Okay, so from last week, we've got questions.
We do.
So let's address those. Question time. Justin L. Justin says he wants to try separates. His setup is 5.1 and he plans to keep it that way. He's been using a Rotel RSX1550 receiver, but it's now out of date as far as HDMI features go. He's already got it in mind that he wants an Emotiva XPA or monoprice monolith amplifier. So he's looking for a pre-pro that only needs to do 5.1. He's considering the $700 Emotiva MC-700, but are there any other good options around that same sort of price point?
Right, so
We've
Justin is probably not going to like our real answer. And even though Tom isn't here, I know for sure he would agree with this, which is that we're going to tell you to get an AV receiver.
Yeah.
One that has pre-outs.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing stopping you from using the AV receiver as a pre-pro. You don't have to use its internal amps.
You do not. Right.
Now, do you actually need an external Emotiva XPA or monoprice monolith amplifier? Probably not. However, I have an external amplifier. Tom has an external amplifier. So we're not going to tell you that this is something you shouldn't do. It's
never let need be the reason you get stuff, right? It's about want. We're Americans.
You probably don't actually need it, but that we're perfectly fine. A good amplifier will last you forever and ever. So we don't have any beef with that. And sending the signal to those amplifiers, as long as your receiver has pre-outs, it can act as a pre-pro really, really well. And since you were considering something in the $700 price range, we would be pointing you over to Accessories for Less to the Denon X3400H, which is $500.
There you go.
But it has a full set of pre-outs. It can definitely do 5.1. It can, in fact, do 7.1 or 5.2.2 at most. It can do 7 speakers total. That would be where it maxes out. But he only wants to do 5.1 anyway. But it also has Odyssey Multi-Q XT32, the highest level of Odyssey, all for $500. So that's where that would be our real answer to you.
You just get so many more features that are ready to work with everything that's out there. It's less compromises on settings and features and compatibilities.
And you get good room correction, and it's a lower price. So what's not to like? But let's just say that's not what he wants. Let's say he doesn't want Odyssey. Let's say he wants a different room correction than Odyssey. Okay. Well, I'm still going to be pointing you at a couple of AV receivers because price. Ironically, even though the pre-pro doesn't have amplifiers built into it, they're usually more expensive than the receiver version that has the identical features and does have amplifiers built into it. So let's say you want something else. How about Anthem? We mentioned them earlier. If you want to try Anthem Room Correction, their least expensive AV receiver model is the MRX-520. That'll do 5.1.
Not cheap.
$1,400. That's the retail price. So we've doubled your Emotiva price. It is a receiver. It has amplifiers built in. Maybe that gets you to question whether you need the external amp. But the reason to get this would be because you specifically want Anthem Room Correction, not really any other particular reason. But it has the pre-outs if you want to use it as a pre-pro. Another option would be from NAD, from NAD Electronics. They have their T758 version 3 AV receiver, not pre-pro, because the pre-pro is more expensive, but that one has Dirac Live built into it. So if you want the Dirac room correction, that is one of the least expensive ways to get it. That's a $1,300 AV receiver.
Is there a compelling reason why someone wants Dirac versus another?
So this is the thing where Tom and I don't necessarily follow what is like kind of trendy right now.
Right.
Because... So all of these things use fur filters. Well, actually, ARC doesn't even use fur filters. They use infinite impulse response filters, but Dirac and Odyssey both use fur filters. They have slightly different algorithms, that once they take the measurements, how they apply their correction and their filters to it differs. They're two different companies. They came at it two slightly different ways, but the principles behind them are very, very similar. And
you can imagine I'm very cynical and suspicious, and my first thought is, they're just buying this software from the companies that really do it, aren't they? I mean, that's the first thing I think of. They're legit from scratch writing their own software.
Yeah, Odyssey made their own. I mean, that's what is used in IMAX theaters is Odyssey.
Yeah.
Dirac made their own from the ground up. Anthem made their own Anthem Room Correction from the ground up.
There
but
you go.
All of them, you can alter the target curve manually. So
right.
In the end, they can all be exceedingly similar. However, some people just have a preference. So I'm putting that out there. The T758 version 3 from NAD is an interesting unit because you do get Dirac Live for that $1,300 price point. It has 7 amplifiers built in. It is an AV receiver, but it can actually be expanded to 7.2.4. It has 4 additional pre-outs for your 2 pairs of overhead speakers. So if you want to expand all the way to 11 speaker Atmos, it can do it for one of the lowest prices if what you want is Dirac built in. Now, finally, that brings us to an actual dedicated pre-pro that is not wildly more expensive than the $700 Emotiva, with a feature that the MC-700 Emotiva does not have, which is a full set of XLR connections.
Oh, okay.
Because all of these other ones we've been talking about, including the Emotiva MC-700, they use regular RCA connections to connect the receiver or the pre-pro to your external amplifiers, which is fine. However, some people are like, I gotta have balanced XLR connections because it's just
my house is full of radiation and interference.
My amplifiers are 300 feet away from my pre-pro. I've got to have XLR connections. So there is Outlaw Audio's Model 976. That is their pre-pro that they're selling right now. 7.1 goes for $930. So it's a little bit more expensive than the Emotiva, but not crazily.
Well, he said same sort of price point. What sort? Sort is still 3 digits,
within a stone's throw type of thing. And that gives you the full set of XLR. So that might be what you want to consider. Now, the Emotiva MC-700 and the Outlaw Model 976, neither of those has automatic room correction at all. They don't have anything akin to Odyssey or Dirac or ARC. But what they do have are parametric EQ filters, manual ones, and you can actually use them with Room EQ Wizard. So you could get your own microphone, connect it to your own laptop, run Room EQ Wizard, take your own measurements. Room EQ Wizard can then generate recommended parametric EQ filters, which you can then manually input into the Outlaw or the Emotiva. So there's still a way to do EQ and room correction. It's just a little bit more involved. It's more manual to do it, but those would be dedicated pre-pros. But I'll take it back to the beginning answer, which is the thing we recommend is Denon's X3400H because it's $500 and it does everything you need to do and it gets you Odyssey.
As cynical as I get wanting to have that finer thing. I get wanting to get more involved. I kind of dig the sound of that manual adjustments, your own
if that's your bag,
I like you can imagine that's fun, for a lot of people, and I respect that too. So if that's the thing you want, there's your one other option, gives you something more to play with.
There you go. So
hopefully
plenty of
that
options, something out of there
satisfies Justin.
Yeah.
Matt E. First, Matt says, thanks so much for all of our suggestions for his small room that is a family room first, a playroom second, and a theater third. There's a big opening at the front, so he has a retractable projection screen come down when it's movie time. Well, that's very cool, and also very common that we just don't all have a space for a dedicated theater.
Yeah, no, I like what he's done here. So yeah, you got this entrance into his dining room, and then you press the button, and down comes your screen. Very
and if you want to go to the fridge, you can still sort of limbo under the screen. Dun, dun, dun,
or you
dun,
could
dun,
raise
dun.
the screen. That might be. Yeah.
No, I like the challenge of as it's coming down, you're like doing a Raiders of the Lost Ark thing, sliding underneath it. Wait, with your popcorn. That's very cool, though. I am impressed with what he's done. We said Ascend Sierra. Hang on, I'm scrolling. We said Ascend Sierra Luna on-wall speakers would be a top choice if he can afford them. He can. He was even considering JBL synthesis in-walls before, so the Lunas are less expensive than those. He also likes the idea of SVS Prime Elevation surround speakers. But if he can afford a second pair of Sierra Lunas as surrounds, would they be way better than the Prime Elevations? And he says way better. The word way, isn't it?
This
Are
is
they way better?
Not easy answer.
No, it's not.
And actually, there's if we get that far later on in the show, someone is asking about a similar thing about the having perfectly matched speakers all around you, as opposed to these would be slightly different speakers, right? You'd have Sierra Lunas up front as your front, left, right, and then Prime Elevation speakers, which are clearly different speakers as your surrounds. Would they be way better?
Way better is a big ask.
Way better. I'm gonna have to say, as an opinion, and this is an opinion, but I would have to say no, not way better. Right. Would they be a slightly different and perhaps slightly better experience than these somewhat mismatched speakers? Yes. As surrounds, I can say, these are to your sides, maybe a little bit behind you, maybe a little bit above you, but more or less to your sides. And our hearing is still good to our sides. Right. Our hearing is pretty crappy behind us. It's pretty crappy above us. So when it comes to someone saying, should I have perfectly matched speakers everywhere? Now, if you got all the money, then sure, why the heck not? But I'm like, if you're going to skimp anywhere, I would easily skimp on what's above me. I would easily skimp on what's behind me. I would be willing to skimp on the surrounds, right? If this is a matter of I need to save some money, I'd be like, yeah, you can do that without hugely defeating the purpose of having surround speakers or something, right? It's not going to be a waste to have mismatched surrounds versus your fronts. Your front three, I want those to match. But your surrounds, I'm like, yeah, you could skimp there. But if you don't skimp on the surrounds, if you do get perfectly matching surrounds, I think it is a little bit nicer.
Okay.
When a sound pans around you, right, all the way around, you get that full panning effect. The timbre stays really perfectly matched, and it seems really seamless, and you don't notice that it's a slightly different tone to the sound as it moves from front to back, from front to side. So yeah, I think it is a nicer experience, but we're talking about a pretty big difference in price here. They're basically doubling the price.
Oh, doubling. Well, so, that's the judgment call, isn't it?
It really is.
Doubling the price, and it may not be way better, but you seem to think it's going to be noticeably better.
Yeah, I'm saying you're not getting nothing for that money.
Right.
But you're not getting so much where I'm like, yeah, you've got to do that. Right? It's in that nebulous gray zone. So that's tough, right? How do we give an answer to that? Because I can say that. Does that help you decide? I don't really know. I mean, it basically comes down to, do you have the money in hand? It's really not going to be any detriment to you. You're not thinking, I really should take half of this money and spend it on something else. If you're thinking, I really should take half of this money and spend it on something else, then that's what you should do.
Do that, yeah.
Because it's not such a big difference that I would tell you that you ought to, nope, take all that money and spend it on insurance. However, if the money's in hand, you're like, yeah, this money is mine to spend. I'm like, yeah, you're getting something for it.
Okay, that's fair enough. If you got the money, do it. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Yeah, you're not getting nothing. Since he was wondering if it might be possible to put a subwoofer somewhere in this room, we asked a couple of items, and we asked about a couple of items and whether they could be moved out of this room. No getting rid of the toy kitchen playset. That's understandable. That was his daughter's first ever gift from Santa. And no moving any of the other furniture. The recliner stays. That's his wife's seat, which she loves. And if any shelves were moved, something else is ready to take their place. So you gotta stick it in there somewhere as is. But where his stand-mounted speakers are now, that's still, quote, theater space. And he might be able to move his couch forward a few more inches, possibly just enough for a sub to squeeze behind it, quite possibly a cylinder lying on its side. So with those two potential options, any recommendations for subs? Would a PC2000 on its side, squeeze behind the couch, really still be okay? AVRant listener Clarence wrote in to ask if Matt's fireplace is actually ever used. Maybe put a sub in there.
That's an idea.
And then when Santa brings the next gift for the daughter, he'll be blasted right back out of the chimney. Close the flue if you put it in there, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm a little concerned about rattles because if that's a functioning fireplace, I imagine a sub in there is going to cause some rattles.
I just love the idea of neighbors walking by and hearing kind of a foop, foopity foop, foop, foop.
I'm not entirely against sub in the fireplace, but it's not my first go-to. But yeah,
the first question is, can you put a PC2000 on its side? Is that okay?
You absolutely can. That is 100% okay to put.
You know
that
what it
on
reminds
its side.
me of? Back in the day, bazooka subs for cars used to be like super popular. I assume they still sell them, but they were hugely popular back in like the 80s, 90s. And that's what it makes me think of, is just a big old tube on its side. And sure.
I mean, I would love for you to pull that couch a little bit forward anyway. Because it's quite close to the back wall there, which is less than optimal. We'd like to have some distance between the back of your head and the wall behind you. So, I mean, if this is the excuse you need, of I get to pull it, another 8-10 inches forward from the wall, that gives me just enough room to shimmy a sideways lying cylinder back there. Now, what will the performance be like that? So, again, we got this large opening at the front, right? So this is not a enclosed rectangle of a room.
Right.
He was like, if he just goes for the smallest something, like an SB1000, a little sealed sub that takes up as little room as possible, which of course that could be an option for fitting where one of his speaker stands is right now.
Right. Or in the fireplace.
Yeah, exactly. That could be that. But he's like, could he benefit from the higher output of a PC2000 because he's got this opening? And the answer is, yeah, you could. An SB1000 will be fine. It's never going to break itself, but it's not going to pressurize this space. Probably don't want to pressurize the whole house, but if he wants that extra output, having the availability of the PC2000 wouldn't be a terrible idea. Will it sound optimal lying on its side behind your couch? The answer is we don't really know, because this isn't an enclosed rectangle. What we can tell you, though, is that having a subwoofer in the middle of a wall is generally pretty good. Yeah. As far as single subwoofer placement goes, that's almost always the best place, is the middle of a wall. So all of this adds up to, I'm like, it gives you an excuse to move your seat a little bit. It's totally going to work. It'll never break itself. It has ample output. It's going to be right behind your seat. I'm like, it seems like a pretty decent idea to me. I'm on board with that.
Right. I'm thinking, two things. One, you get that, we've talked about this before, where if you can't pressurize the whole space, at least get that gut punch kind of brown note.
You get it close to you. You get that kick drum definitely thumping you.
You get that chest thump. That's kind of nice because it's just so close to you. Also, I have like a question about like what do you set that sub on if it's on its side? Because it doesn't really have like feet you can put to mount it like that, right?
No, and it does have the PC2000 does have a port on, I guess you could call it its back. It's hard to say something round has a back, but let's say on its back, where the amplifier plate is, we'll call that the back. It does have a port back there as well. So you wouldn't want to, of course, have the amplifier plate and the port like on the floor.
Right, so you want to point that up probably.
You'd want to have that aimed in some direction that at least the air can move. So either up or towards the back of your couch would be fine.
I feel like I'd want some little arches, like I could cut some pieces of wood or something. Yeah, I guess you could, couldn't you?
That's all you need. Just a little block of wood to stop it from rolling. Although if it's going to be wedged in behind your couch, it's not going to roll anywhere anyway.
It's not going anywhere. Yeah. I like that idea too. He tried running a Phantom Center before. It made for dialogue intelligibility problems, and I agree with that. He doesn't have any such problems with his current center speaker on the portable piano seat. Now, that's kind of cool. So he's pulling that center out every time he wants to watch a movie. Huh?
That's right.
All right. So he isn't convinced it's all because of room acoustics and his seat being very close to the back wall. Regardless, he's willing to try the Sierra Lunas with a Phantom Center, but if that doesn't provide good results, what would we think of using a ceiling mount similar to his projector mount to hang a Sierra Luna center from above the center I mean, from above the screen rather than using the piano seat. And what about the Sierra Horizon Center? Worth considering. What about the dome tweeter version versus the ribbon tweeter version to keep the price more reasonable? And since he's in Canada, what's the shipping situation with Ascend? A lot of questions going on there. I like the idea of not having to pull a little piano seat out all the time. I mean, almost anything I had to do to not do that would be important to me. And you could, if you don't mind the look of it, mounting a speaker just above or just within that black area above his screen.
Yeah, but then it might actually be down into the actual entrance, right? I mean, you'd have
to be
lowest,
just above the trim. Yeah,
the lowest you could put it would be like kind of with the bottom of the speaker level with the bottom of the trim.
Bottom of the trim, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, once you see that screen come down, is only a little bit above the top of the screen. That would be where we go. That's
kind of what I would want.
Yeah, I mean,
because that makes it no farther from the center of the projected image than his center on the piano seat. It wouldn't really be any farther away from the center.
Sure,
maybe about 6-8 inches at the most.
It'd be a little higher than the center line of the screen than the one below it is below the center line of the screen.
Yeah, just kind of judging from the picture we have, it's awful close.
Yeah, I'm hemming and hawing on this because once you put a center speaker or a front left-right speaker elevated, we are good at detecting where a sound is coming from in front of us. It's about the only place we're good at detecting where a sound is coming from is in front of us, and we can tend to tell when a front speaker is elevated like that. Now, it's not the worst thing ever. You can have it tilted down. It's reasonable. I mean, honestly, if it'll make your life easier, then I can dig it. I can get behind it.
Yeah, because I personally, it would drive me nuts pulling that speaker out every time.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that myself.
Yeah. You would definitely want to make sure it's a mount so that you could angle it down at you, have it aiming at your face. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's the very tip-top choice I would go for, but if it does make your life easier, it's certainly not so bad that I would say not to do it.
Right.
Again, kind of a wishy-washy answer, but that's where I would land on that. So yeah, I think that's fine. The Sierra Horizon Center, there's no way you're going to ceiling mount that thing. It's freaking huge and heavy. So, and you don't need it. You really don't need it. The Sierra Luna as a center, because there is a center version of the Luna, which is just the Luna turned sideways and the tweeter rotated. But that is really all you need. Your seating distance is so close. There's no reason to go for a different one. There's the I mean, it's kind of a moot point since we're saying don't get the Horizon anyway, but the dome version versus the ribbon version, they do sound different. I can hear the difference between those two. They have a different timbre to them. If you're going to have...
characterize the difference?
Well, that would be tough to do. Basically, just say if you play the ribbon version next to the dome version, back-to-back A/B compare them, you'll be able to tell them apart.
Okay.
That's about it. So since you're going to have the ribbon tweeters in the Lunas, you'd want the ribbon tweeter in the center as well. But just get a Luna center.
But just get a Luna center.
That is the answer. And as far as shipping them to Canada, Ascend will absolutely ship to Canada. There will be a charge. They do charge shipping. But they're just, you call them on the phone or email them, they will set all that up, and they're fantastic. They have fantastic packaging. They are very, very careful with their shipments, so no problem there. But yeah, there will be a charge to ship it to Canada.
Right on. Okay, one more Matt question. He's got a USB microphone on the way so that he can start taking measurements with Room EQ Wizard, which we mentioned earlier. And he's interested in room treatments, although there are obviously very few options for where treatments could be placed. What should he be looking for in the measurements to help him decide if acoustic panels would be beneficial? And what do we think of maybe leveling up his blackout curtain to maybe have insulation sewn into it to make it into an absorber? If that can look good,
it's going to be a thick and kind of stiff curtain if you do.
Yeah, man.
Because it need to be at least 2 inches thick insulation for it to be kind of worthwhile.
I had very good luck one time back in the day when I was in college with a bedspread because I didn't care what anything looked like, and it was in my little recording studio when I was doing radio. And, it was only probably a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch thick and fluffy, and it absorbed most of the high frequency, sort of
be the high
slap echo kind of thing.
That's right. The thinner it is, the more you'll get the high frequencies, but not the mid-range
not the low lower, right,
or the bass. I mean, usually when it's curtains, my advice is to just get curtains that are much wider than you actually need, so you
can bundle them up.
You just bunch it together.
Yeah,
because sewing insulation into it, like I say, you'd want to use 2-inch thick insulation, and then it's probably not going to look like a curtain anymore.
No, it's just going to look like you hung a mattress,
a flat surface. Yeah, so I'm not sure.
Just decorate a mattress and put it back there in front of the window.
I mean, maybe what you do by leveling up is you literally just buy a second blackout curtain exactly as you have right now, but then you just bunch it all together. At least it'll do something in the high frequencies. Won't do much for your bass. But what are you looking for in the measurements? As far as telling what you want in the way of acoustic treatments, mostly you're going to be looking at the waterfall plots. You're going to be looking at the decay times, because what we want to see, generally you're going to see longer decay times as the frequency gets lower. It's going to be rising decay times as you go lower in frequency. That's just natural. Lower frequencies take longer to form in the room anyway, and they take a little bit longer to decay as well. But what we want to see is that general gradual rise. We don't want to see lots of in and out on that waterfall graph. We don't want to see some long decay times up in the high frequencies and some very short ones. We want it to be a fairly even, smooth, uniform looking waterfall plot that just happens to, come forward a bit more on what looks like those mountains on that waterfall plot as you go lower in the base. So if you're seeing a lot of in and out along that waterfall plot, that would tell you that, some acoustic treatments can probably help you, because you're getting uneven decay times otherwise. I'm
suspicious of the doors with all the glass that are just to his left as he sits on his couch, as far as reflections. But that's hard to treat because it's a door and it looks pretty. I think you're down to just more bunched up curtains at that point.
It could be, yeah. And I mean, that can be it. If what you're seeing is a lot of in and out in the upper mid-range and treble, then that is where even bunched up curtains could help you there. They're not going to do anything in the bass, and I don't think we're going to be putting a bunch of bass traps in this room. Plus, you have a big opening anyway. So, but yeah, that's what you'd be looking at, those waterfall plots, and you want a smooth, gradual, somewhat rising as you go towards the bass.
And keep us updated as to what you do. I'm always fascinated to see how people solve these, real life problems that we all have when we try to jam electronics into rooms that other things happen in. Jonathan F is up next with a question. REL just announced some new subs that are priced to compete with SVS. People have noticed that SVS is very good and priced reasonably. But in a shocking twist for REL subwoofer fans, they have eliminated the speaker wire inputs, which they had previously always claimed as the preferred connection method.
What they had in their manuals and on their website.
This is the best. We don't need it anymore. What sense did using speaker wire connections ever make? He asks. Wouldn't that require telling your AV receiver that you do not have a subwoofer and then running your front, left, right speakers as large? Wouldn't that cause bass issues and potentially tax your amplifiers and front speakers more than necessary?
Yes, all of those things, absolutely. Jonathan, which is why we never recommended doing this. But it all stemmed from REL being one of the first companies in Great Britain that got on board with telling people that they should use subwoofers even in a music-only system.
There you
and since so many of those used stereo integrated amplifiers or stereo pre-pros or stereo amplifiers,
they didn't have a sub out.
Didn't have a subwoofer output. Your only option was to connect it to the speaker wire outputs. Now, why did they take that a step too far and say that is the preferred connection method? That I can't tell you, because
that's just them selling to the people that would buy it.
That's
had
a marketing line.
Yeah, it's not.
I guess it was not only is adding a subwoofer to your 2-channel music system a good idea, this is the preferred way to do it.
Sure,
right? Make them feel better about it. But you don't get proper bass management that way. You do have to do the things you described, right? You have to say you don't have a subwoofer. You then are forced to set your front, left, right speakers to large, full range. Then you have speaker wire going either daisy chaining from your subwoofer to your front, left, right speakers, or going to both your subwoofer and your front, left, right speakers, meaning both your subwoofer and your front, left, right speakers are getting a full range signal. And now you have to contend with, okay, now you have non-optimally placed speakers that probably can't play down to 20 hertz anyway. But even if they could, they're not where they should be in the room for good bass because they have to be there for stereo imaging. And that creates issues there. It's not properly bass managed. It is not the preferred method of connecting it. But
believe it or not, I do that in this room I'm sitting in my office studio.
You don't have a subwoofer.
I do have a subwoofer, but it's a speaker level input only that I got from somebody for free. And so I just hook it up as B speakers.
Right, right.
As a secondary set. And so, but it's good. It's actually pretty good.
Gives you some extra thump, but yeah,
it does.
Why did it make sense to have the speaker wire connection? Because it really was the case that a lot of stereo setups just don't have a subwoofer output.
That's right.
So, yeah, you need the speaker wires, but they're getting rid of them on these new models.
Right, they kind of have noticed. And his final question: if you used a speaker wire connection for your subwoofers, how would you set the distances for your front speakers plus the subs that are sharing the same signal connection? Yeah, good question.
You can give an independent distance setting to your subwoofer versus your front left-right speakers when you use the subwoofer output, right? Well, yeah, of course, inside the AV receiver, you can't. That's right. What you would have to do is hope that your subwoofer that has speaker wire inputs, and that's what you're using, has a fully variable phase knob, because that's how you would do it. Now, it would be getting the same delay, the same distance level setting as the front left-right speakers to begin with, but then you could individually, as long as it has a fully variable phase knob, change the timing on the subwoofer independent of the front left-right speakers using that phase knob. But if it only has a polarity switch, a 0-180 degree polarity switch, well, now you can't, which is where some of this idea of, oh, well, my subwoofer ought to be as close to my front left-right speakers as possible, because they're all sharing the same distance, which is, again, putting your subwoofer not in the optimal place in the room. But all of this was...
That was the habit back when subwoofers first started to come out. People assumed you just set them where the rest of the speakers are up front, right? So that's
all of this was happening before we had Harman's research and the better understanding of where your subwoofers really ought to go in your room to deliver good, uniform, linear bass.
We know more now, and so does this company.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to Nathan D's question. The Super Bowl, whoops, I have to pay a fine now to the NFL for saying that out loud on this podcast. The big game wasn't even broadcast in 4K this year. So when do we think it will be broadcast over the air, not only in 4K HDR, but also with immersive audio? 2020, 2021, later than that? My guess would be not for quite a while would it be broadcast over the air in 4K HDR, but I bet by next year it'll be in 4K HDR if you pay for some NFL streaming something. That would be my guess.
The cameras will have to be there first, obviously.
Right. I bet you by next year, though, that's just a guess. Next year, 2020, but not over the air. That's not going to happen for quite some time.
So, I mean, I'm looking at like NHK's super high vision system, right? What they're going to be using for the Olympics in 2020. This was their whole goal, was to have the super high vision system going by 2020. It's actually why Rec 2020 was called Rec 2020. That one was not just a randomly assigned number. So 2020 was the goal for all of that. Will that be in North America though? And will it be in time? You know, because I mean, the big game happens kind of early in the year. So I don't think next year's broadcast will be in super high vision in North America.
I feel like it could be streaming though. As easy as it is for me right now to stream 4K HDR from YouTube and Netflix and Amazon Prime, I don't see any reason why you couldn't have some little NFL app and they offer that. They could get the cameras. Lord knows they can afford to with the money involved in that broadcast. But over the air, I mean, there's just our over-the-air standard is not going to change for a long time. I don't think
we've got what I was going to mention, ATSC 3.0. I mean, it's a slower progress on that than we kind of expected.
As it kind of should be, honestly, in my opinion, because there are still people using 4x3 CRTs in this world.
Yeah.
There really are. And they're using adapters. It's not
the same change as going from analog to digital was, right? If you once we get onto ATSC 3.0, ATSC 1.0 is still going to be working for many, many, many years.
Yes.
And there was no ATSC 2.0, by the way, in case you're wondering where that number went in the chain. There is no 2.0. But yeah, so will ATSC 3.0 be ready by next year for a full 4K over-the-air broadcast with immersive audio? I'm going to say no to that.
No.
Could it be by 2021? Well, Super High Vision is going to be out. The Olympics are going to be broadcast in it. That does include NHK's version of immersive audio, which is their 22.2 channel-based immersive audio. But ATSC 3.0 includes basically the new version of Dolby Atmos for broadcast. So that's all going to be part and parcel.
There's just not enough people who either care or who can afford the televisions. I know 4K TVs are getting cheap, but
I don't think
right now, let me just tell you this. Right now, Comcast changes almost every channel, no matter what format it's broadcast in, to 720p.
Yeah.
And that's what most people are watching. The NFL channel happens to be an exception, but that's not where you watch the super game.
The Superb Owl.
The Superb Owl, that's on broadcast TV, and that's going to max out at 1080i or 720p, depending on the broadcast channel. So I don't see that over the air changing anytime soon. There's not a compelling reason.
It's going to happen, though. So what do we think, 2022 then? 2022?
I'm really pessimistic on any 4K over the air for a very long time.
Well, that's Lee's prediction. I'm saying I think we could see it 2021. I definitely don't think it's going to happen next year. I don't think it's going to be 2020. I think there's an outside chance of 2021. I think 2022. That's my prediction.
I'm going to bid $1 and say you've all overbid.
Okay. Fair enough. There you go.
That's what I say.
Speculation.
But streaming possibly next year.
Okay.
Mark R. Mark took our advice and quickly made some DIY absorption panels and bass traps, and they look good in the pictures he has sent. The other change he made was cutting an 8 by 10 inch hole in his back wall and recessing his projector back there. He just has a frame around it right now. Should he close off the opening with Edmund Optic's glass? Why?
Soundproofing would be the reason why.
But you have good ventilation in your little 8 by 10 hole.
I know, right? Because the exhaust is definitely coming out the front of that projector.
Well, you better blow it out the top somewhere into that wall. You better run a duct.
You'd have to be really careful about airflow concerns if you do close off the front. So really my question to you is, are you having any soundproofing issues? Because if having this hole in the back of your wall has created soundproofing issues, you kind of got to close it up somehow. But a lot easier said than done. You definitely have to worry about where is the exhaust air going, how is the cool air getting back in, how is all that airflow working, fans, all that. So as long as your soundproofing situation is okay right now, I would opt to not close it.
Right. And if you do decide to touch it with some fancy glass, man, you need to figure out where you're going to pull air in and blow it out.
Yep.
And possibly you could pull it in behind your back chairs, behind your back seating down low, and then blow it out
the theater in
somewhere
around
up into the house. I don't know, but it just
upwards.
Yeah, you're gonna
little air baffles in the front to make sure the exhaust coming out the front is directed upward. Yeah, that's a whole thing.
I assume if he set that back into the wall, there's space behind there, and that's not an exterior wall of the house. So one could fathom going either if there's an upstairs or if there's an attic space above that, and find a way to duct it out into an attic or into another room. That's about all I get. But I would hate to risk the overheating of that projector.
Yeah, only if you've ruined your soundproofing, Mark. That would be the only time I'd be saying to close that in right now.
But otherwise, kudos to his building of those nice looking black panels. Everything looks really slick. Very well done. Dan H. Dan would like us to do a bit of a deep dive on the somewhat confusing difference between setting an 80 hertz crossover and setting a 120 hertz low pass filter for the low frequency effects channel. All right. Dan feels he has a good understanding of the difference between bass management versus the dedicated LFE channel. But for the benefit of everyone, could we get into the nitty gritty? Why is the subwoofer pre-out on an AV receiver sometimes called the LFE out? Why is an input on a subwoofer sometimes labeled LFE in? There can be more sound than just the dedicated LFE channel coming out of an AV receiver's subwoofer pre-out, correct? And more than just the dedicated LFE channel going into a subwoofer's LFE input, right? Mm-hmm. So bass management versus LFE, please make the distinction clear, Rob.
Sure. Yes. So yeah. I mean, he's bang on with all of that.
Pardon me while I snack while you answer this, because it's a little beyond my ability to make clear. So going to eat a little bite. Go on.
I think it would help to just understand channels first. Like, what is a channel? So when you are creating a soundtrack, we use channels in the old way of doing things, and still in the current way of doing things as well. Mm-hmm. We use channels, which is to say, I have a particular sound and I want it to come from a particular place, and we have mapped 5 speakers and a dedicated low frequency effects channel, and I can choose which of those channels or combination of channels I use to position my sound. So I have a front left, a front right speaker, a center speaker, a surround left, a surround right speaker. These have positions where they are supposed to be. I know that's where the speaker is supposed to be. Those are my 5 speaker channels, and I have a 0.1, a dedicated low frequency effects channel. And I, the mixer and mastering engineer of this soundtrack, can choose which channel or combination of channels plays which sound.
Exactly.
So
maybe I can make a good guess as to how to say this. Is it the case that bass management is more about pulling frequencies from the other channels that the mixer put there and instead sending them to your subwoofer? Is that
right?
Close?
So yeah, bass so all of these 5 speaker channels, when we're talking about what is in the recording, those are all full range channels. They can contain sounds from below 20 hertz all the way up to above 20 kilohertz. They can contain the entire frequency range of the sound. That's what the channel can contain.
Yes.
And then we have this dedicated low frequency effects channel that will only have bass sounds in it. But all of these things are optional, right? So when we want to bass manage something, we're saying, okay, we have these channels, we have this recording that could contain all of this information, but now I want actual physical speakers to play that signal back. And most speakers cannot play all the way down to below 20 hertz. And even if they could, we wouldn't want them to because they're not in a good position in the room to deliver uniform linear bass to all of the seats if they did play that.
Which is what you keep telling me about my big tower speakers that have 15-inch subwoofers aiming off to the side. That's where all my low frequency goes, and I'm doing it wrong.
What we can do is, in an AV receiver or a preprocessor, is we can say, okay, filter off all of the bass from all of these 5 speaker channels, filter that off, and instead send that bass to a speaker that is well positioned and well suited for producing nothing but bass, our subwoofer.
Right.
So that is managing the bass. It's filtering it off from the speakers that either can't do it or are poorly positioned to do it and sending it to a speaker that can do it and is well positioned to do it. That's managing the bass. Yeah. What about the low frequency effects channel? That is a channel. It could theoretically be played out of any speaker. It doesn't have to be played out of a subwoofer. It could be played out of your front, left, and right speakers. Theoretically, although AV receivers aren't set up to do this, but theoretically it could be played out of all 5 of your speakers. It's a channel, it's a recording, it's a signal. We have to tell some piece of equipment what should play back that channel. And normally we have it played by a dedicated subwoofer, which is good at playing bass and can be positioned to play that bass well to deliver uniform linear sound. So the low frequency effects channel is not a subwoofer channel. It's not. It's a
channel that has a lot of bass in it.
It's a 6th speaker channel that doesn't have a dictated position, because all the other 5 speaker channels have dictated positions, but the low frequency effects channel doesn't have a dictated position. It only contains bass, but it is not a subwoofer channel.
Right. Okay.
So why does it say LFE out on some AV receivers? That's poor labeling. It shouldn't say that. It should say subwoofer output. That's what it is. It's not the low frequency effects output. The low frequency effects could be coming out of your front, left, right speakers. That's entirely possible. Why does a subwoofer...
Which happens in my case. I route the LFE to my front, left, and right.
That's right. Why do some subwoofers have an input that says LFE in? Well, that's a little bit different because normally your subwoofer will have a crossover knob. And in fact, that should be called a low pass filter knob. That is a knob that is filtering off higher frequencies. So you could theoretically send your subwoofer your front, left, and right speaker channels. We talked about that if you're using speaker wire. They'd be getting a front, left, and right speaker channel, but we don't want the subwoofer, the physical thing now, to be playing all of those frequencies. We only want it playing bass. So we could filter it off using a low pass filter. But if it has a input that's labeled LFE in, usually what that means is it doesn't have a filter on it. It's saying, if you're going to use this input, make sure the signal coming into this subwoofer has already been filtered by something like an AV receiver. You, the user, you got to make sure that you're only sending bass to this thing. So when they label it LFE input, that is not the greatest labeling. It's not the greatest choice of name, but it's a clue to tell you that we haven't put a filter on this thing. We are not filtering off high frequencies. The signal you're inputting here should already be filtered. But you're right. It's poor naming.
There we go. So moving on with his questions. So the LFE channel is a dedicated channel, all its own in movie soundtracks. What range of frequencies can it contain, and is it ever used for music? Well, the low bass of music. Does it have a top frequency that is technically allowed in the LFE channel?
Yeah, so it tops out at 120 hertz.
There you go.
I mean, on Wikipedia, they're like the signal goes from 3 to 120 hertz. I'm like, there isn't a defined bottom end to it, but 120 hertz is about as high as it goes.
Yeah, and there's no point in 3.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe
just to bother whales if you live near the coast. I don't know what that would be for.
Not much point in a whole lot below 20. You can feel a little bit of rumbling below 20, but you can't hear it. But anyway, yeah, 120 hertz is the high end, so that's the range. I mean, the 0.1 is kind of a clue. You could kind of say, well, maybe it's 20 to 200. That would be 0.1 of 20 to 20,000, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But no, it's 120 is where it tops out. Is it ever used in music? It can be. It's
sure.
It's pretty much never used. Well, it isn't used in 2-channel music because 2-channel music is 2 channels, not 3. And
that's
the
true.
low frequency effects channel is a channel. So 2-channel music, no. But
oftentimes music in 5.1 surround soundtracks, they already send the lowest bass to that LFE channel.
It can be, yeah. So yeah, your surround sound audio formats, your DVD audio, your Super Audio CD, they can. It's optional. A lot choose not to. A lot only encode it as a 5.0 signal. But it's there. It exists. It could be used on like concert Blu-rays or something like that. Quite often, they'll use the low frequency effects channel. But it's entirely optional. Like we say, it's a channel that only contains bass without position information expected of it. It's an optional thing that they can use, but you'd only find it in surround sound music.
There you go. On most AV receivers, there's a setting called LPF for LFE. And by default, it's set to 120 hertz. But you usually have the option to manually change that setting if you want to. Dan likes to change his speaker and subwoofer configuration quite frequently. Why? So sometimes he'll try using just one subwoofer. I guess it's fun. Sometimes he'll use 2 subwoofers. Sometimes sending the subwoofer out signal from his AV receiver to the powered bass drivers in his Definitive Technology towers. A bunch of various setups. He's found that sometimes with certain configurations, if he leaves the LPF for LFE setting at 120 hertz, he's able to localize the sound and tell where the subwoofer's placed. So does it make sense to lower the LPF for LFE setting in those instances? And what happens to the bass in the dedicated LFE channel above the low pass filter frequency that he sets manually? Does it get rerouted to other speakers? If it's already coming to your subwoofer and you cut it out of that subwoofer, the subwoofer doesn't know to send it back to anything. It's just gone.
Yeah, the low pass frequency for the LFE channel, for the low frequency effects channel, LPF, low pass frequency. Yeah, so like we say, that low frequency effects channel can contain sounds up to 120 hertz. If you set the LPF for LFE within an AV receiver to something lower, it is now filtering off some sounds that might be in that dedicated low frequency effects channel all the way up to 120 hertz. It's filtering those off, and it is not rerouting them anywhere. It's just filtering them off. They're just getting quieter and going away.
It just goes bye-bye.
Yeah, so it is possible to quote unquote lose some of the bass that was in the original signal if you do that.
That's why we have bass management.
Yeah, except that this isn't managing the bass as in sending it elsewhere. It's
no, the filtering. I'm just saying if you only wanted frequencies 80 hertz or below to your sub, that's what you need to tell your receiver.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is a little bit tricky. So I mean, what you've done is you've experimented and you found some times where you have suboptimal subwoofer placement, don't you? Because if you're able to localize the bass like that, and it's probably happening when you're using one sub, that would be my guess. That is a great example of why we so often say we want you to have 2 subwoofers. We want them optimally positioned so that you have uniform bass response. And if you have that uniform bass response, you won't be able to localize the subwoofers even when they play low frequency effects all the way up to 120 hertz. Why do they do that? Well, because the dedicated low frequency effects channel is able to play up to 10 decibels louder than any other speaker channel. And sometimes they're like, I got 100 hertz sound and I want it even louder. So I'll throw it into the low frequency effects channel where it's allowed to be even louder than any other speaker channel. So if you want to get all the bass, you don't want to change that LPF for LFE setting. You want to leave it at 120 hertz, and you want to only use setups where you don't localize where the subwoofers are placed, because that's how it's supposed to be.
There you go. Yeah. Alrighty, continuing on, he's got a lot of questions. Going back to some of the earliest instances of discrete 5.1 and how the folks at THX proposed the signals be handled, it seems as though 80 hertz was always mentioned, but he didn't see 120 hertz being mentioned. So why was the LPF for LFE set there? Why isn't it all just 80 hertz? I think 80 hertz is what we always recommend. That's what I've always heard you recommend, Rob.
Oh yeah, as far as the bass management, as far as
bass management.
Yeah, where your speakers should play down to 80 hertz, and then everything below that we would like to have rerouted to a subwoofer, which is optimally placed. Yeah, why was the upper limit of the dedicated low frequency effects channel set at 120 hertz? I'm not entirely sure, except to say that there were, like I say, the low frequency effects channel is able to play 10 decibels louder than any other. Right. And at some point, somebody probably just said, I got this sound, it's a little bit higher than 80 hertz, I want it even louder. So that little bit of extra headroom was allowed in that low frequency effects channel. I mean, that's
I would think it's because of tiny little Bose Cube speakers. That because of the existence of those ridiculous things.
But that has nothing to do with the low frequency effects channel.
I know, but you need to, they just by default, they're expecting to send more to that low frequency effects channel because they figure people have tiny little speakers that can't play, 90 hertz.
I don't really think that was part of it. The bass, because you can set a crossover between your speakers and your subwoofer to be 250 hertz in most AV receivers. As far as managing the bass that the little satellite speakers are playing, you can do that completely separately, completely independently of the low frequency effects channel. So he's
so that's bass management again versus
that's bass management
low frequency effects.
So he's like, why does the low frequency effects channel go all the way up to 120 hertz? Why does it do that when it can start to become localizable? And the only reason I can give you is they wanted some sounds above 80 hertz to be even louder than what any speaker channel can contain. You did ask a question about his particular Sony, which doesn't let you change the low pass filter for the low frequency effects channel. Why did they not allow? Frankly, that's what I want them to do. There's not really a good reason to be filtering off bass. So I actually think Sony's right on that one. And if you're noticing, hey, I can localize this up, it's like, well, that's a clue. That's a clue that you haven't optimized the position or number of subwoofers in your system.
Right on. On a slightly different topic, his front left-right speakers are DefTech towers, but he got 5 identical DefTech Mythos speakers to use as his center, surrounds, and surround backs. They might seem like overkill as surround back speakers, or even as perfectly matched surrounds, and Dan has noticed that we often make recommendations for surround back, or overhead speakers that do not perfectly match the front 3 without much concern about that difference. And we actually talked about that just a while ago.
We did that earlier, yep.
But he's been into home theater since 1987. He's been through many setups and continues to experiment. He's found that having perfectly matching speakers all around is something special that he thinks everyone should experience and aim for if they can. So I assume he is very sensitive to the timbre matching on speakers and just loves it, has heard the difference and loves it. So why don't we advocate for perfectly matching speakers in all positions? To be clear, he completely understands someone being on a budget. Well, there you go. That's part of it. Or expanding their system over time. That was another part of it. Or putting together their first Frankenstein system. But if someone has the money available, why are we seemingly so willing to say that mismatched side, back, and overhead speakers are fine? I don't know that I've ever heard you guys or me on this show say that it doesn't matter, just that it isn't the biggest difference to most people. It's not the biggest priority you have when picking what you're going to use and how you're going to spend your money. I always think, yeah, sure, if you got the money, match them all the way around. It is nice. It looks cool. Everything matches.
I'm not against it.
No, it doesn't hurt anything.
I'm not against it, and I'm more willing than Tom is to say that I think perfectly matching surrounds are worth it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the various levels here, the ultimately, why do we give the sort of advice we give? It's because we put an emphasis on value. We put an emphasis on trying to spend as little money as possible to get really good results. Now he's saying he understands, spend as little money as possible to get the best results possible, which would still involve, in his opinion, perfectly matched speakers all around.
Yeah. So for some folks, we all have our own particular sensitivities to aspects of this game in audio and video. You know, some of us are more sensitive to the way these things sound. Some get bothered by the way certain screen technologies look, that sort of thing. Yeah. So if it matters to you more, then your answer is make sure they match.
Yeah. I will say for overheads and for back speakers, I'm willing to say that I'm very okay with, so I'm not talking wildly mismatched.
Right.
But somewhat mismatched speakers overhead and behind, because my experience has been that I did the thing. I got perfectly matching speakers everywhere. 11 of them, not exactly identical, because my front 3 are slightly different from my surround backs and overheads. But these are all Ascend Sierra REL speakers. They all got the ribbon tweeters. They all have excellent timbre matching. I did the thing. And I went from having the dome tweeters as my height and back speakers and surround speakers to having ribbon speakers all the way around me. I noticed the difference in my surrounds. So there you go. I'm saying the side surrounds, it could be worth it.
Right.
The backs and the overheads, I didn't notice the difference. And I'm a fairly critical listener. And I'm like, there is no way that I'm going to tell somebody that they really should spend the money for their overhead speakers to perfectly match, because I'm like, I just don't hear it. Now, maybe he does.
And he might.
That's a different.
There isn't as. It's a weird way to put it, but there's not as much content in those speakers.
There definitely isn't. Yeah, the fewer sounds are played out of them. Yeah,
and fewer sounds come out.
Same thing with the backs. I'm like, I don't hear the difference. Now, if I'm playing one test tone at a time from one speaker at a time, super critically, is there any chance I could hear it from the backs or the overheads? Maybe, but I'm like, I'm worried about real content. I've never noticed with a slightly mismatching back or overhead speaker. I've never noticed that difference. The surrounds, I could. The surrounds, it can happen.
Fair enough.
That's where I land on that, and that's the reasoning for the recommendations I give.
Right on. Would you like to move on to new questions for this week, or shall I ramble for a few moments about my situation?
Oh, let's get your situation. Yeah, well, let's try to keep it where we want to get to as many questions as we can. But there we go.
But just like this last question from Dan, he has a sensitivity to timbre matching in his speakers. Yeah. For me, I can't stand if the picture quality on a screen changes based on my angle.
Okay.
If I move off to the side just a little bit and that picture drops off, it gets a little darker, changes, I don't know why it drives me insane.
Then you probably don't want a Vizio.
I do not. And I did not. I went and looked and I hated it. I hated TCLs. I hated all of them. And I came to the conclusion that what has happened now, first of all, I have 2 new televisions. Okay. I had 2 very old televisions by modern standards. We had a Plasma from 2005, which was a fantastic TV and still is eminently watchable from 2005. But it maxed out at 1080i. And the panel is 1366 by 768. That was our main TV, and it was great for ages. Our secondary television in the den for watching news and simple stuff, that was an LCD television from 2006 made by Sony. So I had a Panasonic Plasma, Sony LCD, both of them 1366 by 768 panels, and it was time for a change. Both of them maxed out at 1080i, and the LCD in the den didn't even have a working HDMI input anymore.
Oh, okay.
So we're like, okay, and we've been through Best Buy a bunch of times, and last year, people might remember me talking about how I actually went and purchased an OLED, brought it home, got mad at the apps and hated the remote control, and then a blue pixel came on and got stuck, and I was like, Hulk smash, and I took it back, and we were like, forget it, we'll just wait for better. Well, guess what? We found out that Best Buy price matches Newegg.com.
Okay.
And this was a revelation. We went into the store and we saw they had like a flash sale for $19.99 for the 65-inch B8 OLED from LG. Nice. I'm like, holy cow, that's a pretty good price for in the store. That's the best we're going to get in this little town anyway.
Yep.
And we're like, went home, thought about it, and like, okay, let's get that. And we went online, and their website didn't have it at that price. Like, what? We were just there. And so we went back to the store the next day. It was back up to $2,500.
Okay.
And we're like, no, you don't. So long story short, we got them to price match, and we brought that home. That's the B8. It's been a joy. And then a couple weeks ago, we bought a Sony 43-inch LED television. It is edge lit, but it's an IPS panel. So
IPS panel. That's the thing that allows for wider viewing angles. Usually, at the sacrifice of the deepest blacks, you don't get the deepest blacks on that.
But that's a perfect match in there.
Is lower.
Yeah. You're exactly right. The contrast is not as great. Certainly nothing like an OLED.
Right.
There are no true blacks on that TV.
Right.
And your vertical viewing angle, as with a lot of computer IPS monitors, is not great. But it happens to fit perfectly in that room. But I was just shocked that there are no good small TVs. Good, in my opinion. Like literally everything below about 49 or 50 inches now is just a cheapo piece of poo-poo. Everybody just decided we want it cheap as possible, we want it as flat as possible, and we want it to say 4K. Nothing else matters. Well, it has to have apps, a bunch of apps, app, has to have apps. And that's been the priority on TVs. And I swear, it's like I want to just shake everybody and go, y'all, we used to have TVs that looked actually better than this. You know, like the Sony LCD that we had in there was fluorescent tube lit. But it was also an IPS panel, and we paid too much money for it back in the day. But you could see it was nice and bright and punchy, and you could see it from all angles. And I couldn't believe we had to go with a more expensive Sony again to get the same viewing, because I think Sony is the only IPS screen below 49 inches.
I think LG should be as well, because I think all of theirs are IPS.
Wasn't very good.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of LG's LCDs in general. I'm like, I find that difficult to get behind.
And I found it crazy that compared to 2005 and 6, the same people weren't very good at LCD televisions, and Sony still was. LG still had kind of crappy LCD television, and Sony still had good ones. So that, I got over the picture quality differences in there, and it's a pretty decent The speakers are terrible. Speakers used to be better because we didn't expect TVs to be microscopically thin back in the day.
Razor thin,
What I can't figure out...
This is a common complaint. Like I hear it all the time on the AV Forums podcast out of the UK, because they're like, in the UK, people want smaller televisions, right? This seems to be a North American thing where we want huge TVs.
Yes.
They're like, in the UK, people want 50 inches, 42 inches, something like that. And they're like, if LG can make an 88-inch 8K OLED, then couldn't you turn that panel into 42-inch 4K?
Thank you. I probably would have spent the money for an OLED in there, but it wouldn't have been appropriate because burn-in would be an issue. I literally watch cable news tons, and then there's like, football games, and I like to be able to hit pause and walk away for 2 hours. So that's needed.
The viewing angle thing is a trick because, like, for example, Sony has attempted to address that on last year's flagship LCD, the Z9F.
Those are nice.
They used a vertically aligned panel, which is the panel that usually gives you good for LCD black levels, good panel contrast for LCD, but narrow viewing angles. That has been the trade-off of vertically aligned LCD panels for a long time.
That's right.
Now they did a bunch of trickery and put filters on it and stuff like that to try and expand the horizontal viewing angle, and they were successful at that. It was good, but at the cost of the black levels went up. No, it wasn't so much the price. It was
compared to most LCDs.
Yeah, but the black levels went up and the contrast went down, and it basically looked like an IPS, an in-plane switching LCD panel. That ended up being the end result, and people were not happy about that. They're like, this is a flagship LCD with full array local dimming. It should have great black levels and high contrast. So it's this trade-off that, OLED has managed to, what is going to be the fix? Could micro LEDs be it? Well, the smallest micro LED they were able to make at 4K resolution, which is totally a prototype and had to be embedded in a wall for all the cooling that it needed, was 75 inches, right? Samsung did that, but you're not going to get that down to a little 40-inch micro LED. So OLED, technically, if you can do 8K resolution at 88 inches diagonally, you can do 4K resolution at 44 inches diagonally.
Yes, maybe that will happen because Europe wants it. Like you say, there are places where people don't have as big of houses. It's really hard to, when your entire wall isn't 85 inches across, it's very hard to put an 85 inch.
Clearly, we've got tablets and phones with very high resolution and little OLED screens. So clearly it can be
And that's another frustration. My wife wants to buy a new tablet, and she actually likes the 7-inch size. She mostly reads books and looks at simple websites and stuff. There isn't a good 7-inch tablet anymore, ever, anywhere. They've given up. I think
everything's bigger.
There are only two that have decent screens, but they're both 4 years old. One from Apple and one from Samsung. And so they're slow. Yeah. And so just everybody decided big, gotta have big. So she's considering a Surface Go of all things. So anyway, that's just another thought. But I'm more or less happy-ish. I just think it's funny that, everybody loves these super thin screens.
Yes.
And then most people don't mount them on the wall, so it doesn't matter. And then if you do mount it on the wall, the mount has it sticking out from the wall about the same distance as it would have stuck out if it had been 3 inches thick. And I'm trying to figure out, how did our lives get better because we went from a 3-inch thick TV
Yeah, I never fully understood the
thick.
making televisions razor thin thing either.
It doesn't benefit you. It doesn't help.
I mean, I guess shipping, maybe? Does it help in shipping?
Lighter saves a little money? No,
lighter is good.
It's purely aesthetics. People just think it's cool.
I think so.
It looks futuristic, and that's what people want, is for this whole package to look futuristic. But, there's still electronics on the back of the TV unless you get that wallpaper one from LG.
And then they've just been moved out of there.
And you just move it to a box.
Big and ugly sound bar. Yeah.
So anyway, so our secondary television, we went back and got that OLED. So far, it's in there running right now in the living room. I'm having it run because we only have like several days left in the return window to make sure if any pixels are going to come on, I want it to just run and run. So it's playing stars right now because there's no logo. But so far, the B8 solved my problem of 60 frame per second videos that some of them weren't playing. Do you remember that, Rob?
On YouTube, specifically.
On YouTube, specifically. The YouTube app is beautiful. I've watched 4K HDR, and a little HDR indicator comes up on the screen to extra please you, to tell you that. And so that and the quality of the panel, man, I'm just feeling good about it. The border is not silver, it's black. So it just disappears.
Yes, it does.
I think, this is like
any black bars in the image blend right into that black border, don't they?
And let me tell you, just if you're wondering what kind of TV to get, my recommendation, I think Rob's is too, unless you have a compelling reason not to get an OLED, can't spend that much money.
And there are a handful.
Or you just have crazy burn-in habits.
That's right.
If you can get an OLED, you start there. And you need an excuse to not get an OLED. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and there are valid reasons not to, but I am totally in agreement. That's your default position of, if I want a really darn good looking TV, 55 inches or larger, then OLED, yeah.
Let me tell you though, the operating system, the menu system, and the remote, I still hate it. But
I'll try talking to it more.
I don't want to talk to it. I don't want to talk. It's so stupid. No, I wish I could have my Sony menu system and remote. And they just do an ugly, old-fashioned, it's a menu list.
Oh, well, I don't like their Android TV system, the Android TV system on their higher-end TVs. I'm no fan of that.
I guess, but I just don't care. I only need 3 or 4 apps to watch things, and I never sort of see the app operating system. If I project or cast a YouTube video, I never really see it. It just pops up on the screen. So who cares, right? But I don't know. I just hate it. It still looks like a Fisher-Price toy, and it's just so goofy. And
you just gotta get yourself a Harmony, and that'll be.
We do, and we're gonna do that. What I hate though is I wish I could hit display really quick and see what the settings are it's using, and stuff like that. Or I can't figure out how to make everything go away off the screen immediately. I just end up putting the remote down and waiting like an idiot. And then finally, the stuff on the screen, all the information finally goes away.
It does, yes.
And the pretty little hot pink pear-shaped pointer just finally goes away.
Yes, it does.
But the screen is beautiful. So I'm finally...
Those would be nitpicks. I will call those nitpicks.
Yes. I'm a happy OLED owner. So
all right, congratulations.
just wanted everybody to know. Anyway, so moving on to new questions for this week after I've burned a little time talking about my adventures. James C. has a question. James now has 3 KEF LS50 speakers for use as left, center, right. Whenever someone mentions that they have LS50 speakers, we seem to respond positively and say they're good speakers. Well, but when people ask for a speaker recommendation, we rarely say to get the LS50s. Is that, or have there been enough instances to really say that? Ascend Sierra or RBH speakers get recommended way more frequently, according to James.
Certainly lately. Yep.
Yeah. So do we think those are way better? Again, that way word comes up today. Would we say he's missing out on something with his KEF LS50s?
No, James, you have fantastic speakers.
Fantastic.
Yes. Okay. So obviously, there are lots of really good speakers that we have zero beef with, that we would go, oh, big thumbs up, you got those. but we don't mention all the time when someone asks us for a recommendation. We absolutely have our go-tos. Those go-tos change as new products come out, as new price points are hit. Because what Tom and I always get excited by, because I mean, we've been doing this for years and years and years. So to get us excited about something, it takes some doing. And what we get excited by is when the goalposts move. Right? Yeah. Somebody brings a level of performance that used to cost much, much more down to a new price point. And, RBH has done that with their Impression Elite series. We feel, right? Yeah. They took something that used to cost like $1,000 more and brought it down to a new price point. We get excited about that. Does that mean there are other speakers that are similarly priced and similarly good? Yeah, there are, and we don't always mention them. And if we tried to mention every option every time, it'd be interminable, right?
You can't do it. Also, it may be the case, and remember, despite my rambling about my own life just now, this is primarily a question and answer podcast. And so it may be the case that just the questions that have come on to the podcast happen to have a Ascend Sierra RBH as an answer, because it may be people who are saying, we all know the KEF LS50s are good. Would it be better if I bought something better? That happens a lot, right? So we get these sort of brands and models that become sort of default go-tos. Yeah. Like I just said, start with an OLED unless you can't get one. It may be that's what you're seeing is just the questions happen to have Ascend or RBH as an answer.
Yes. Lately. Yeah, and we will stand behind that recommendation because we think they'll make the person who's asking happy. But like, I really like PSB. As a speaker company, as a brand, and as the way their products perform, I really like them. How often do I end up recommending them? Not that often. Which, does that mean I don't like them? Does that mean I think everything else is way better? Nope. I mean, it's just it's a language thing. It's a time thing. I mean, this came up once before where like this was back years ago on a forum, but I was on Ascend's own forum, and someone asked, would these Ascend speakers be a good choice for my room? And I was like, oh, actually, I think this model in Ascend's lineup would be even better for your room on Ascend's own forum. Yeah. And somebody chimed up and they're like, why didn't you mention these other speakers from this other brand? And I was like, I'm going to mention everything that is possible. Like, it just,
I feel like what some people, maybe like James, wish was they could come to the AVRant website and see an exhaustive list of everything we don't think is bad.
It's been requested that everything we've ever mentioned be linked to in one combined place. I'm like,
one giant list.
I don't have the time for that. No, and if you have the time for that, all the links are in the show notes at AVRant. You want to go through post by post. Everything has been linked to, but they don't want to spend the time, and neither do we. So
that's why you just have to keep listening week after week.
But the LS50s are lovely speakers. We have recommended them specifically to people when we feel like that is the best choice. Their form factor, the sound quality that someone's looking for, the price point they want to hit. When that's the best choice, we have recommended them. So they're fabulous speakers. There's no reason to change over to something else, James. We love them, and if you love them too, that's great.
Yeah, everybody wants to know that what they have is okay.
Of course,
and man, you know what? Do you love it? And then it's amazing. There's a lot of leeway.
Lots of good stuff out there.
Yeah, lots of good stuff. Chad B has questions. Chad says he finally completed his Atmos setup, and he thanks us for thanks us for our help along the way. He used the Nico. Is that Nico? Is that pronounced? Or Nico?
I always say Nico, but
Nico?
I don't know if it's
Nico. Anyway,
I mean, if it's like Japanese, it's be Neiko, but
Neiko. Okay, he used the Neiko self-adjusting wire stripper that we recommended. Hey, I got those too. And he thinks everyone should own one of those. I do too, especially since we have so many speaker channels to install these days. Yes, those are so cool. That's like magic.
I love them. They're $13 and some change on Amazon right now. So this is not a massive expenditure. You know what? If you're someone who's like, my wife asked me what she should get me for my birthday and it can't be too expensive, I'm like, get a pair of these. That'd be a great gift.
I asked for them as a Christmas gift a while back, and it's just I can't figure out why are they magic? It's amazing. He has equipment in a rack outside of his theater. So what do we recommend for getting IR remote commands from his theater to his rack? Should he get one of those wireless IR extender kits? Should it be hardwired? He'd prefer something as inconspicuous as possible. What can we do in that regard nowadays?
Yeah, so I mean, my first go-to would be get a Harmony Hub. Because if you want a Harmony universal remote anyway, or to just use the Harmony app on your phone, then Harmony Hub would work. If you're doing it through the app on your phone, that's all Wi-Fi. So you could have the hub positioned by your rack and the phone in your hand in your theater, and that's going to totally work because you're not even worried about wireless ranges as long as you've got Wi-Fi in both your theater and wherever your rack is positioned.
Exactly.
So Harmony Hub is an easy recommendation there. Now, let's say you are using an actual Harmony remote. It is not communicating with the hub via Wi-Fi, and if you put the hub where your rack is, that's going to be too far away or through too many walls or too much wireless interference or whatever. So you need to keep the hub in the room with you. Well, the hub also has 2 little expansion ports and comes with a little additional mini IR blaster. That is a wired connection, so you'd need to be able to somehow run the wire from the hub to its little mini IR blaster so that the mini IR blaster can be over by your rack. Now, you could just use a 3.5 millimeter extension cable. That'll work because it is just a 3.5 millimeter plug. But sometimes those aren't the best shielded. If it's a really long distance, it doesn't work that well. So actually, I want to thank Mike S because he had that exact scenario. All right. He has a Harmony remote. He has a Harmony Hub in his theater with him, but all his equipment is in a rack far away. And he wanted to run the little mini IR blaster over there. So he just got a 3.5 millimeter to Ethernet.
Look at
adapter.
that. I didn't know that was a thing.
It's $10. So
how is that a thing? That's so cool. Okay. And it goes how far can it go?
However far Ethernet can run, so 330 feet.
What? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for $10, that's a great way to extend if you want to do it physically. Now, let's say
it doesn't have to be powered? That's amazing.
Doesn't have to be powered or anything. Yeah, it is a 3.5 millimeter to Ethernet adapter plug, a pair of them, one on either end. Now, let's say you don't want to use Harmony Hub for whatever. You've got a remote that you already like. You just want to be able to send the command to your rack, and it's far away. Well, you could go with the wired solution. It'll be very reliable. These go for like $25. It's just a little IR receptor that plugs into a little hub that then distributes it to a bunch of tiny little IR blasters or little IR eyes that you affix to the to your actual equipment. Now, here again, you'd probably want to connect the little IR receptor to the Ethernet adapter. That way you can run Ethernet over to your rack. You can have the little IR distribution hub in your rack and all of the little eyes that send out the IR commands to your equipment in the rack. All of that can be over in your rack. You just run the Ethernet to your theater and plug in the little IR receptor to your Ethernet adapter. That's how you would do it hardwired. Could you do it wirelessly? Yep. And I would point you to one of my favorite companies, which is Sewell.
All right.
They have a wireless one. Now, of course, it takes the IR in at the receiving unit, sends that wirelessly to an IR emitter, which you then position close to your rack. The only question is, will the wireless signal get there? It's a radio frequency signal. Should work for about 100 feet line of sight.
Yeah.
And usually about 30 feet through a wall. If that'll work, that's very inconspicuous and
It's very tiny. That's it's the size of one small headphone.
Absolutely. So that goes for about $45-50. So there you go. I have no problem recommending that Sewell wireless one if you're going through one wall and it's going to be about 30 feet away. That should work nicely. But if it doesn't, the wired solutions exist. And
I'm just amazed. I don't know why I'm so amazed at the Ethernet one. It just doesn't seem like that should work. It's like, why didn't somebody just build that adapter before? That's kind of amazing. Also, he has Crown amplifiers powering his front 3 speakers, which are M&K S150s. The rest of his speakers are powered by his AV receiver's built-in amps. He ran Odyssey, and some of the channels had their trim levels set at -3 dB, while one channel was set to +5 dB, and all the rest landed somewhere in between. Is that any cause for concern? Is a +5 dB trim level boost too much? No, not if it works.
That is all fine.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, if you're anywhere within the range that the trim levels can be set, you're okay.
Yeah.
I'm not super happy about below -6, above +6. That starts to get into the range where I'm having a small amount of concern.
Yeah, something is weird if you start getting above that, yeah.
Yeah, but between -3 and +5, and when it's only one speaker, that's the one that's off in your front right corner and farthest away from you, it's an Atmos channel or something, totally fine.
Yeah.
No cause for concern at all.
Yeah, I mean, just the shape and arrangement of things in your room could easily cause that much. Yeah. Should he adjust the gain on his crown amplifiers to try to get the trim levels in his AV receiver to set themselves as close to 0 dB as possible? What's the proper way to set an external amp's gain when using a mix of built-in and external amplification? Is that necessary?
So, I mean, in your situation, since at worst it was -3 and at worst it was +5, this isn't something you need to do. I don't think you need to adjust your gain specifically. No. But how would you do it? Well, it's the same procedure as you would do for your subwoofer, right? On your subwoofer output, you want to adjust the volume knob on the subwoofer itself so that once you've run the auto setup and it has adjusted the trim level for your subwoofer, that it's not, wildly out of place. Yeah. Now, they make it a bit easier on the most up-to-date ones because they'll allow you to, they'll just play a test tone out of the sub before it even begins the process and say on screen, adjust your volume knob on your sub until it reads 0 dB on screen. And then that's done. They don't give you that for all of the other speaker channels. So it would be a little bit of trial and error, right? You set the gain on your amplifier, you run the auto setup, it comes out to -9, and you're like, I should probably boost the gain on my external amplifier a bit if that's, or actually reduce it if it set it to -9, because that means it was cutting it down. So that means you had a little bit too much gain. If it set the trim level to +9, that means you should probably boost the gain on the external amp. But when you're within ±3, you're done.
Yeah, no, you're fine. It's just not worth worrying about. On a different topic, why is it that when you back up a Blu-ray disc that has Atmos audio on it, the Plex interface shows the audio format as being 7.1 Dolby True HD? His AV receiver does say Atmos on its front panel when the movie actually plays, but when you're browsing your library in Plex, it doesn't ever show the Atmos as the audio format. Man, I'd say that's a question for Plex.
Yeah,
they're just not displaying it right.
It's strictly just an interface thing. Yeah. So on a Blu-ray disc or an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc, if the soundtrack is Atmos, it is a Dolby True HD codec with an Atmos extension on it. That is actually what's on the disc. If it's DTS, it'll be a DTS HD master audio soundtrack with a DTS X extension on it for DTS X. So for whatever reason, Plex is detecting the soundtrack, it's detecting the Dolby True HD part of it, it's not detecting the Atmos extension part of it and showing that to you on the little splash page for the movie. Right. That's something that they can reprogram. I'm sure it's fairly low down on their priority list, and that's the only reason why. But yeah, I mean, that's purely just a programming of the interface thing.
There are so many things that can go wrong nowadays. If it's working and it just isn't displaying right,
well, like
I'm kind of okay.
On the Apple TV 4K, if you go to Netflix, and it's a movie that's on Netflix in Atmos, it doesn't say Atmos on the little splash page, even though it will actually play back Atmos if the movie is available in Atmos. So that's just an interface programming thing. Hopefully they'll get to it one day. I'm sure it's on their list of things to do, but it's probably not the highest priority.
Not the biggest one. Speaking of Apple stuff, the Apple TV version of Plex lets you quickly fast forward or rewind, but it doesn't output lossless bitstream audio, so no Atmos or DTSX output from Blu-ray backups. So he got an NVIDIA Shield, which handles the audio perfectly, but its version of Plex doesn't seem to have a quick way to fast forward or rewind. You can skip forward or back, but you'd have to keep clicking the button over and over and over. Is there a better way?
There sure is.
Yeah, I know you've talked in glowing terms about NVIDIA Shield.
Yep.
And so what is the better way, Ron?
You talk to it.
Oh, you like talking to stuff.
You press the little microphone button on the Plex remote and you say, skip forward an hour. And it takes you exactly an hour forward.
Can you specify exact number of minutes?
You definitely can.
What?
You can specify seconds.
Right. Now, if I could do that through my television while I'm watching YouTube videos, can I? With my LG TV?
If you can't talk to it, if you only want to press buttons, then yeah, you've only got the skip forward and back buttons.
Well, I've got it. There's a mic on my remote and a little microphone button on my remote. Can I press that and say skip forward 30 seconds?
You can certainly give it a try. I can't tell you every single app on every device will work, but it's worth a try.
Man, I might actually activate that.
Shield.
I haven't activated that feature on that LG remote yet, and I'm like, I don't care, it's stupid. But if it'll do that, pretty cool.
Sometimes.
So NVIDIA Shield can do that, huh?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I use it myself. I know for a fact it works at Plex. It'd be like skip forward 29 minutes and 15 seconds, and that's what it'll do.
What?
Yeah.
ooh, that's neat. So, like, finally, I've always said, like, I know there's a lot of like talking to machines now, and very little of it do I feel like is any advantage, right? Because like I can already do everything you can do talking to your, I don't want to say the name of it because it'll activate somebody's face.
That's right. Yeah.
So let's just make up a new name. Linda. Let's say your box is named Linda, and people go, Linda, what's the weather? And by the time Linda says the weather, I can pull my phone out and look at the weather.
That's right. Yeah.
But precisely fast forwarding a certain amount of minutes and seconds is something I've kind of wanted to do, and it's hard to do with the tiny tip of your finger. Or
skipping back. Skipping back too. Yeah.
Interesting. Sorry, I just got really excited about that. So good question. Thanks for that question, Chad, because now I'm excited. Moving on to Brenden G. Brenden has a home theater in his basement and a second TV in his living room upstairs. In his home theater, he started with a BIC PL200 subwoofer, but its volume knob broke, and they were unhelpful as far as warranty support goes. So he upgraded to an HSU, a Shure VTF2 Mark V, MK5, and has been very happy with that sub.
It's a nice sub.
First of all, I'm from Alabama, would have jammed pliers up in there. But the shoe would be a bit big physically for his living room. Don't let that stop you. We're America. So he is looking for a more compact 12-inch sub. He was thinking the SVS SB12 NSD that was on sale for Black Friday would have been perfect, but he didn't have the money on hand at the time. Ain't that always the way? He doesn't want the budget to balloon too much, so the SB1000 seems like an option, yes. But then he came across Rythmik subwoofers. Rythmik with a K on the end.
That's right, yeah.
They offer their L12 for $529 shipped. It's a little bit bigger, about an inch in every dimension, and it's heavier, and it claims a -3 dB point of 18 hertz compared to the SB1000's -3 dB at 24 hertz. So, is the Rythmik L12 closer in performance to the SB12 NSD that he missed out on? Is it better than the SB1000? Better than the SB2000? Should he get it? He's dying to get it. Is that a good decision? Everybody wants Rob to say, "You're okay, man. You're that's not a stupid decision."
Oh, it's not a stupid decision at all. No, it's right in this mix.
Yeah.
Actually, if anything, I would say it's really comparable to the discontinued SB12 NSD.
So he's right on track with his idea that this does kind of match.
Yeah, I mean, what it basically has is it has about the same cabinet size as the SB2000.
Right.
But it has the amplifier power of an SB1000.
Okay.
It's a teensy bit more expensive than an SB1000, although only $30. So they're cutting that cost down. They're probably not making a huge profit on that.
But well cheaper than the 2000.
It's well cheaper than the SB2000. Yeah.
All right.
This would be a great choice. This would be a wonderful choice. Yeah. Should everybody run out who had an SB1000 and upgrade to this? No, it's not that different.
Right. No, it's not, well, put it this way. It's not way better because everybody's using way this week. Right. It's not way better, but better.
It's not quite up to the level of an SB2000. It doesn't have as much amplifier power. The woofer doesn't have as great a range of excursion as the SB2000's woofer has. But yeah, it's pretty darn close to what the SB12 NSD was like 100 watts more powerful when it was around. So, it's right in that mix.
So very good choice at the price,
really good
man.
Choice. Yeah.
Go for it. There you go, Brenden. Bryan W has questions. Brian has an L-shaped room. This happens to everybody. You can think of the theater area as being a rectangle, 11 foot 4 inches wide, 16 foot 8 inches long, and 8 feet high. Then the left side at the front is open to another area. Okay, so you've got the dimensions. You got 11 by 16.
Is like the theater area, and then the leg of the L is off to the front left.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm trying to adjust myself.
The TV's at the bottom of this image here. So
turning around. So the image we're showing, you're picturing that. Okay, so
let's see if we go like that. No, that doesn't quite.
That confuses me even more.
There you go. But, that's kind of what we're talking about.
So now you've got me sitting on the couch. Is that in the video?
TV's at the top, open area to the left at the front of the room. There you go.
So you're facing the TV, then the open area is to your front left.
That's right.
There we go. Phew. Okay. All right. So then the left side at the front is open to another area where he keeps his computer desk. That's sort of around the corner in that L part. That extra area to the front left is 6 foot wide by 9 feet long. So just under 2,000 cubic feet total. There's an entryway on the right wall at the front that goes to the front hallway, and a second entry on the front wall at the left that goes into the kitchen. His 75-inch Sony X850E TV is wall-mounted on the front wall, with his seats about 9.5 feet away. He's got absorption panels on his front wall behind his front left-right speakers, and more panels on his right wall to try and compensate for his left wall being open. He's running a 7.1 setup with all REL Performa 3 speakers, a Power Sound Audio 15V sub, a Yamaha receiver, and a 2-channel ATI amp powering his front left-right towers. All right, here come the questions. Yeah, it's all very good, and I'm thinking about a new Yamaha receiver real soon, so I'm down. Here's the first question. He's got young daughters who use the area behind the seats as a play area. So he decided to install the surround and surround back bookshelf speakers using side clamping wall mount brackets mounted fairly high. Good idea. The bottoms of the brackets are at 5.5 feet off the ground. So that means the tweeters of the speakers are about a foot higher than that. The side clamping brackets can tilt down a bit, but only about 7.5 degrees, and he's pretty close to his side surround speakers since the theater area is only 11 foot 4 inches wide. The REL speakers have curved cabinets, including the top, so he can't turn them upside down to make the tweeter height lower. He used some stick-on neoprene pads so that the side clamps won't mar the nice finish on the speakers, okay? And he could further secure them using the mounting hole on the bottoms of the speakers that was designed to secure them to REL's own speaker stands. Should he leave them as is, or should he lower them? His girls are careful, but having them at seated ear level or just a little bit higher seems kind of low and would basically put it right at his girl's head height right now. Somebody's going to clock their head on that, he thinks, and they're only going to get taller. Does his method of securing the speakers to the brackets seem like enough to use the tilt and just leave it at that? Should he use some other mount, maybe one with even more tilt? Whew. That's a lot to take in and picture. The question is, are his kids going to bump into him? That's what he's worried about. And I mean, if he has them up higher, are they within sort of that Dolby spec of where these speakers are supposed to be? And should he tilt them more right at his ears?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't mention this being an Atmos setup.
Right.
So having your surround and surround back speakers elevate, I mean, first of all, we don't agree with Dolby that having them exactly at ear height regardless. We want at least a clear line of sight. So we would have them elevated a bit. Mm-hmm. But, like ideally, probably not with the tweeters 6.5 feet off the ground. If this were, a completely dedicated, we're not thinking about anything else besides optimal placement. That's probably a little bit high. But that's where we would have put surround and surround back speakers before Atmos came along and Dolby said to suddenly put them at ear level. We would have them elevated anyway. You didn't mention this being an Atmos setup. I'm like, I don't see any reason to overthink this. I would leave them where they are. I would make use of the built-in angling. Yeah. Those side clamping speaker mounts, I've used them. They're very secure. If you can use that little mounting hole that's built into the speaker on the bottom, because you don't want to drill holes, make new holes in the nice finish of the speakers. But if they already have a mounting hole and you can use that, sure. Well, I mean, more secure is never a bad thing.
That's right.
But I wouldn't have any concerns about this.
No.
I mean, I'd leave it at that.
Yeah, you're done, man. You're done. It's safer and less likely to get smashed by kids getting a little exuberant. It sounds like a perfect solution. So don't fret. You're hearing proper surround sound with that setup. You are. Yes. I do like aiming it, straight at your head, though. I do like that a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so he is very pleased with the performance of his Power Sound audio subwoofer, but would adding a second one change his life forever and make him never want to go back? He currently has, that's another one of those, would it be way better? He currently has his sub in the rear left corner of his theater area. There's really nowhere to put a second sub anywhere on the front wall. And the two front corners have the entryway, so he can't put subs there. He could maybe put a second sub in the rear right corner, but then both subs would be behind him. Some folks suggested putting a sub to the left of his computer desk so that it's on the far left wall of the entire L-shaped space, and then put the other sub somewhere on his right wall, but he'd prefer to keep all of the theater-related equipment within just the theater area. His wife would prefer that too, so what do we recommend? man, you got to live life within normal life parameters. It would seem strange to me to have a subwoofer on the far side of your computer desk over there just thumping away.
Well, it's the subwoofer don't care. You know, it doesn't care. It doesn't know that only this area is designated as the theater area.
I'm just saying from a human decorating standpoint, right. I get it.
Oh, I get
right?
it.
Like if I add 2 subs to my room one day, the 2 easiest places is off to the sides of the couch.
Sure.
And I know that won't necessarily be perfect.
In
but that's the best
in his
looking.
room, it would be tough because that's the only walkway to get to the back.
Right.
And it's a pretty narrow straight, right? 11 feet, 4 inches. So directly to the sides of his seating probably isn't a great choice. Now, the thing is, I don't know if these entries have doors on them. You know, that hallway entry, that kitchen entry, are they just open?
Yeah, he doesn't say.
Because if they have doors, great. If they have doors, going to 2 subs could can make a very audible difference in here.
It could, because of yeah,
it really could.
Shape.
If those are fully open, it still could make a difference, but it's going to be a lot harder to predict.
Right.
Because now we're dealing with a whole bunch of air movement in a very non-uniform pattern through permanently open doorways. So with a door, I'm pretty gung-ho about getting you a second sub somehow. Without doors, still would recommend it, but a little bit less enthusiastically because it's that much harder to predict. Where the heck could they go? You could
put it right next to the door that's near the right front speaker. You could put it on the near side of that door, nearer to your seating area.
Nearer to your seats?
Yeah.
I mean, a cylinder. A cylinder
that's
is
right,
something
yeah,
where
it wouldn't stick out as far, yeah.
It wouldn't have the sharp corners. You know, if somebody bumped into it as they're walking, it's not going to hurt anybody because it's a carpeted covered cylinder. So a cylinder there could definitely make sense. I don't disagree with that. I'm looking at, so where his front left tower is, he's got some space between so that is a tower, so you can't just put a subwoofer there, right? If that was a bookshelf speaker, it could become your front left speaker stand because then you kind of have the subwoofers centered in the room width-wise, one at the front, one at the back, which would be pretty good placement. But I'm wondering, could you get a subwoofer in between your front left speaker and your television? Is that TV on?
Front left speaker and television, you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, is the TV up high enough?
The TV's wall mounted, so I don't know what is below the television. Maybe he has a big, equipment thing there, so a subwoofer can't go in there. But if there's room below the TV to the inside of your front left tower, I'm like, just looking at the diagram, it looks like that is a maybe. It's a maybe,
so, or same on the or between to the left of the right speaker.
Yep.
Yeah, it looks too cram. It looked like you'd have to cram it in the corner too much to go to the right of the right speaker, and you wouldn't want it all the way up in that corner.
Having them both on the back wall, that would be the last choice. It is still possible for that to be better than just one subwoofer.
Yeah.
You'd have to do some experimentation, trial and error with changing the phase knob, but that's our last choice because you're fighting against the physics of how sound waves work when they're both on the same side of the room.
Let's not forget, he already said he's pretty happy with the performance, and he's asking, is it life-changing? To get the second one. He's beyond way better. He's at life-changing. He's like, will it just blow my mind?
I gotta say, once you hear it, you don't want to go back.
I know.
You don't want to go back.
But is it life-changing? I don't know.
If you have doors, do it.
Okay, hey, fair enough. And also, if you can get a hold of a sub that you can return without too much cost, if you don't get a life-changing
SVS cylinder
difference.
has free 2-way shipping.
There you go. SVS cylinder fits near that door. Yeah, man, it could fit in several places. So try it. Okay. Or if you don't mind the little bit of trouble, trying it is kind of free.
And we've given some placement suggestions. So
there you go. All right, let's move on to Damien D, and then I'll have to zip on out of here probably after Damien. Maybe we can get to Infinite Gary. Let's see. Damien D has questions. First, an update from Damien. A while back, he was trying to whittle down his TV choices to a good, better, best scenario. Based on our advice, he decided to just focus on either the least expensive good option, the Vizio P series, or the best option, an LG OLED. Yeah, already expressed my opinion. The price difference was substantial, yes. So when he that's why we bought it when we did, because we got that great deal. So when he got a look at them in person on a Costco run, he decided to go with the 65-inch Vizio P series. Great. He finds its picture quality very impressive, and it can be. He's enjoying the extra detail in shadows and highlights offered by HDR. It is amazing. The TV's legs being on the far outside edges was a minor annoyance, but he solved that with some universal TV legs that screw into the VESA mounting holes on the back of the TV. There are so many mounting options in this world. Yep. And I did compliment him on his mounting. It actually looks nice and clean, and they did a good job.
It does.
But then came some issues when trying to use his Apple 4K TV, or Apple TV 4K. Turned out the HDMI cable going from his receiver to his TV wasn't passing high enough bandwidth. Uh-oh. So a monoprice premium high-speed HDMI cable got HDR and his on-screen display working again. Good. But Dolby Vision wouldn't work. Turns out his Onkyo 646 receiver is 1 year too old. The 656 got Dolby Vision pass-through, but not his 646.
Yep.
Okay, so question. He's been thinking about upgrading to Atmos anyway, and he snagged some Focal little birds before they were all gone. He was going to try a 522 setup since his Onkyo could do that, but since he needs to upgrade it for Dolby Vision, he might as well get something that can do 524 Atmos, right? So what do we recommend? Yeah, I mean, you know,
isn't it
like,
easy to spend the money?
Man, I just have to do this. So there's not a firmware update one can do to a 646, because I know some, like I'm shopping for these Yamaha receivers that I'm interested in, and you know, I saw one where I verified that a firmware update could give it Dolby Vision capability instead of just HDR10. But I'm kind of leaning now toward one that already has it all just for convenience, and it just looks nice. So he can't do that trick with this Onkyo.
No, it was the 656 was that model the following year. That it didn't come out of the box with Dolby Vision when it first launched, but they gave it a firmware update. But the 646 was 1 year too old, and actually,
he can't help it, man. He has to upgrade, right?
Well, if you want that Dolby Vision pass-through, yeah. No, AVS Forum has a great thread that Scott Wilkinson created called Dolby Vision at Home, and he hasn't kept it all the way updated to today, but it's not really necessary because everything does it now. Right. So it's got all the models going back as far back as you can go back in the AV receivers that support it. So that's a good resource to make sure that you're getting one if you're looking back a year or two. But yeah. So what would we recommend here? Well, our top recommendations are going to be Denon and Marantz, because over here we do like Odyssey Multi-Q XT32. If you go to Accessories for Less, you can get the SR6012 from Marantz's lineup for $700. It's a pretty good deal. That'll do 5.2.4 right out of the box. It can be expanded to 7.2.4 later if you add an external 2-channel amplifier to it.
Right.
That one does not have a front panel display on the receiver itself, except for the little teeny porthole that shows you your volume.
Oh,
that's it. So if you want a front panel display, you can get the Denon X440 or 4400, sorry, X4400H. Again, at Accessories for Less, they got that for $750. So $50 more basically gets you a front panel display. That's how that breaks down. But let's say $700 is too much.
Yeah.
Is there a less expensive alternative that can do 5.2.4? And yes, there is. And it's Onkyo, who you already know. And it's their TX-NR787. That goes for $500 at Accessories for Less.
I like how we don't quote retail prices. We quote refurb prices from Accessories for Less.
We're always going to send you to Accessories for Less for a receiver. Because
that's what I'm looking at. The Yamaha I want is it's $480.
Yeah. I'm like, why spend more?
I don't know.
You get
an 18-month warranty.
You get a manufacturer's warranty, at least a 1 year. Yeah, some of them are 18, some of them are 1 year, some of them are 2 year. Right. But yeah, and we know Mark provides great service over there, so we like that. Why do something else? If you're in North America, of course. But yeah, Onkyo TX-NR787, $500. We don't like AccuEQ. We're not fans of it, but that's us. That's one podcast's opinion. Okay. They do have their TX-RZ730, which is an interesting model because that one allows you to expand to 11 speakers.
My goodness.
For only $650.
Does he want that many speakers in that room anytime soon?
So yeah, that'll do 5.2.4 right out of the box. You can expand to 11 for $650 with Onkyo's RZ730. $50 cheaper than the Marantz SR6012.
There you go. All right. There are many options. I think, I'm a Yamaha fanboy. I can't help it. And the one I'm looking at would also solve his problem as well. So yeah, in that $500 range, you can solve that problem, man. Let's move on to Infinite Gary before I leave Rob, before I just abandon him. But I do have to get onto some things. Infinite Gary asks a question every time I'm on here.
Yes, he does.
It's so great.
I have to put it on there when I know you're going to be here.
That's right. I always want an infinite Gary question. I think it's cool. No, I mean that. It's kind of fun. I expect it. Whenever we discuss screen size for a given seating distance, we always seem to put it in terms of the horizontal field of view. But what role does the screen's height play in determining the ideal screen size? For example, if you opt for a 2.35:1 aspect ratio screen and you find your personal preference for your seating distance, if you were to switch to a 16:9 screen, would you want to sit farther away or reduce the screen size since it would be taller? Maybe he's overthinking it. I don't know.
No, well, I mean, the thing is, I've seen, size for seating distance guides that do put it in terms of screen heights.
Right.
But I find that odd because most of the time, the thing that's changing in your aspect ratio
is the width.
It's usually the height, right? As far as what's on the disc. So, I mean, like if you're just watching on a disc and you're going to watch it with black bars, you're going to want the thing that fills your field of view width-wise. Yeah. Not the thing that fills your field of view height-wise, right? I mean, the height changes on the disc. You get the black bars that come in. It makes it equally as wide, but not as tall. But I suppose if you're thinking of a constant image height setup with a projector, well, then your height is remaining the same and you're zooming in your projector or putting a lens in front of it to stretch the image width-wise. I always go by the horizontal factor, right? Yeah. Because like even if I went for what would traditionally be a constant image height setup, I still want IMAX to be taller than CinemaScope.
Exactly.
And I want CinemaScope to be wider than HDTV.
I gotcha. Mm-hmm.
So I want HDTV to fill like a 32, 34 degree field of view width-wise. I want CinemaScope to fill a 45 degree field of view width-wise, and I want IMAX to maintain a 45 degree field of view width-wise, but then be taller. That's what I want it to do.
That makes sense. And our field of vision is so much wider than it is tall.
Yeah, we pay more attention to side than we do top to bottom. So yeah, I mean, if you were to switch from a 2.35:1 projection screen to a 16:9 screen, I wouldn't want it to get any narrower.
No.
I want it because you're still going to be watching a bunch of CinemaScope 2.35:1 movies on your 16:9 screen. They're just going to have black bars at the top and bottom.
There you go.
So it's exactly the same screen size. It's just now that if you're watching something in IMAX, it can be taller than your CinemaScope screen used to allow.
Also, I think in practical situations, the width is what's limited more, I think, for a lot of people.
As far as installing it, usually, yeah.
So I guess that's why it's talked about more. I'll tell you what, since that was easy, let's run through one more before I abandon you. I feel bad if I just run off after that fairly straightforward infinite Gary question. Now on to Gabriel J. Gabriel has been using a projection setup for many years now. He uses an 84-inch screen, and the seats are about 9 feet back. Now, that's a pretty good angle. In his ideal world, he'd increase the screen size and make a bunch of other home theater upgrades. So wouldn't we all?
100 inches from 9 feet would be a 45 degree field of view. So I could get on that.
That would be big. But they're a single income family with 3 kids. So the home theater budget is minimal. I understand that. His projector is pretty old now. It's an Epson Home Cinema 720, which is, yes, 720p. Well, you know what? Like I said, I just used a Panasonic Plasma from 2005 until just this week, and it maxed out at 1366 by 768. So it's okay, man.
It was scaling everything.
Yeah, everything was, literally everything was either up or down. He already replaced the lamp once. Now, 3.5 years later, the replacement lamp blew. He's not unhappy with the lifespan. They use the projector every day, but it's still an unexpected expense at the moment. So we're looking at an 84-inch screen. Okay, a new lamp will cost a couple $100. His wife is less than thrilled about that, understandably. But it's the only display they all watch together as a family, so they need something. And realistically, he could scrape together about $500. So what to do? Does he just replace the lamp? Could he use this as an opportunity to finally upgrade his projector to at least 1080p? But keeping in mind, the budget needs to stay around $500, or should he switch to a flat panel? Are there any 55 to 65 4K flat panels for $500 that would be so good they'd be worth the decrease in size? I don't think so. But I do think you could probably find a projector awful close to $500 at 1080p that would make him happy. Is that true? That could match the other specs of that Epson 720?
Yeah. I
think so.
Yeah, go into the flat panel. In this situation,
I don't think so. No, you're not going to be happy.
You can get a 65-inch one that says it has 4K resolution and says it's compatible with HDR. That'd be TCL's S405.
No, don't do it.
It's edge lit.
No.
It's not really bright enough to actually do HDR.
No, you're not gonna like it.
It's 65 inches versus 84.
Yeah, it's just a giant ugly picture. Don't do it.
And I mean, you there are 55-inch 4K TVs that are a little bit better than that. It'd be like TCL's 6 series, which actually you'd have to wait for a sale to get down to 5, but 55 inches.
Yeah, no. There is a visceral reaction we all have to something we know is a bigger screen. Even if you sit closer to a smaller screen, there is there's a bigger effect on your brain.
Literally feel it because that's within where the focal length of our eye, the lens in our eye is actually making adjustments when we're that close. So. Yes.
And so, no, man, once you're in the projection lifestyle at that size for that long, you'd be miserable going to a small TCL. It wouldn't be good. And so, if you can get to a good 1080p TV in the $500 range, might have to push it a little more.
Right away, my first thought was, can you get a BenQ HT2050? Or right now it's the 2050A.
Right.
They go for $700. You can often find them right around $650, $675, but not at $500.
$693, you're right this moment.
$693 on an Amazon seller right now.
As we speak, yeah.
But they're right around $700. Now, why do I like that model? Well, $700 as far as 1080p projectors go is pretty affordable. But what I like about it has really accurate color. It's got an RGB color wheel that spins at a 6 times speed, which means you'll never see rainbows on it. Nice, accurate color, bright, affordable, has a teeny tiny little bit of vertical lens shift, which is nice to have because it means where you put it, you can, get it right on your screen, square it up. So I really like that model, but it doesn't hit $500. He was talking about he likes looking for refurbished. He likes looking for, direct from the manufacturer, stuff like that. If you can get an HT2050A or HT2050 from the year prior, because really nothing changed, at $500, I would be very on board with that. Very, very on board with that.
Does Accessories for Less have projectors like that?
Nope. Unfortunately, no. But I would be super on board with that. Now, there is a model below that, which you definitely can find for under $500. Still from BenQ. It's their MH530FHD. FHD standing for full HD. It is 1080p.
So what are you giving up? What are you giving up?
You're giving up some stuff with that. So, no lens shift at all.
Right.
You'd expect that. It goes down to a, RGB CYW color wheel. Basically, it's the thing that they call in DLPs brilliant color, which is all about getting it really, really bright at the expense of not very accurate. You can turn off brilliant color.
Oh.
If you do that, it's not as bright, but that's fine. You're talking 84-inch screen size. We're not worried about maximum lumen output. That's not the problem. But when you do that, now it only uses the RGB segments, which means that you're down to like a 3 times speed color wheel instead of a 6 times, which means you might see some rainbows. It's not impossible. The color won't be as accurate. It won't be quite as saturated. So you're giving up a little bit of color accuracy, a little bit of bright, unless you turn brilliant color on, in which case it's really, really bright, but definitely inaccurate colors. Contrast, not terribly different. Black level's not quite as good on the MH530.
What about compared to his current Epson 720?
That's the thing.
It's better than that, isn't it?
You're coming from a Home Cinema 720, which is pretty old now, and the MH530 is going to look brighter. It's got a new lamp. It's going to look tack sharp, because it's a single chip DLP, so it's tack sharp. Contrast and black levels, you're not going to see a downgrade going from a Home Cinema 720 to that. So one of those BenQs, if you can scrimp and save and get the HT2050, I would personally be happier because I care about the accuracy of the color and that little bit better contrast. But that MH530, for what you're coming from, I think you could be very happy with it.
I think so too. That is a compelling, like right now, the 2017 model on Amazon, $433?
Yep.
compared to he would have to spend how much for a bulb?
$200 on a new lamp, right?
Yeah,
It's
man, no, I'm not. No way am I spending $200 on a lamp when a brand new projector with better specs is only $400 and some odd dollars.
Yeah.
That, if you hunt around and see if you can find that 2050 for refurb, but otherwise, man, how exciting to get the higher resolution and probably, a better picture overall. And plus, hey, it's Amazon, man. You can send it right back if you hate it.
I mean, this is one of those things where someone gets this thing and they're like, man, you're a snob. because it looks really good.
Right. No, I have this same effect. There's a friend of mine in town that we hang out with, and he loves watching movies, but he thinks my wife and I are ridiculous for the amount of money we spend on video technology and audio technology. He comes over and he goes, wow, it looks amazing. And then he just will not do it for himself. Sure. And he was asking me the other day, it's like, hey, I saw this little Chinese projector for $150. Should I get it? What do you think my answer is going to be? No, of course not. But I understand there are times when the budget just dictates what you're going to do. It's just where people are. And some people just can't get past a certain dollar figure, even if they could, much less if they can't. Right. So I understand completely. So yeah, man, in this case, if you already say you can scrape up $500, you might not even need to scrape up $500 to get a better projector than what you're used to. And if you can find the other one, go for it. It's time to upgrade. I think your wife's going to be down with that too.
I think it could be well justified. I think it could be done without going insane on the price. And And
there you go. You're going to get a BenQ one way or the other. I'd love to hear back from Gabriel to see what they ended up with and how they liked it and how that changed movie night, because I think they're going to have a great time.
For sure.
There you go. Well, Rob, I kind of do have to.
Absolutely. No, dude, thank you so much for filling in. It is a tremendous help.
Left you with a few here, and I hate that, but I do need to get on.
It's absolutely fine. And actually, I know Tom will want to weigh in on a couple of these, so I'm gonna do one more after you're gone, and that'll be it.
Okay, you talk about Nick's question, and I'm gonna say bye for now.
I'm gonna jump down to JPR's because I know Tom's gonna want to weigh in on Nick's. So.
There you go. Okay, great, man. Well, I'm going to say goodbye now, and I'll chat with you real soon. And thanks for having me on again. It's really fun.
Thank you for being here. Where can people reach you if they want to?
Find me on Twitter @LeeOverTweet. And since I've already given out my email address, you can email me, leeoverstreet@yahoo.com. But Twitter is really nice, so LeeOverTweet. And if anybody wants to follow me, great. It's fun.
Awesome.
And we'll see you later, man.
Thank you so much, Lee.
Right. Bye-bye, y'all.
So yes, carrying on, I'll do one more question here, which is JPR's question, and he is asking, what is the benefit of getting, now I'm using some of his words because I'm going to do a little bit of explanation on this one. He's saying, what's the benefit of getting a 4K native resolution Blu-ray player versus getting a 4K upscaling Blu-ray player? So I'm not 100% sure, I just had the question come in from JPR, so I'm not sure of everything that he is aware of and everything that he knows as far as the names of things that we've given and what formats are out there. But I want to make sure this is clear to everyone, because this is an easy thing to get confused or mixed up about, especially if you go to a website like Best Buy's website and you go to the Blu-ray player section. They'll have this like 4K Blu-ray player section, and they'll have mixed together Ultra HD Blu-ray players and 4K upscaling Blu-ray players, and those are not the same thing. So I want to make sure that it is very clear. I think what he means by a 4K native resolution Blu-ray player is an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, and that is the correct name. They don't want you to call it a 4K Blu-ray player. They don't want you to call it a UHD Blu-ray player, even though some manufacturers like Sony label them as 4K UHD Blu-ray players. The correct name of the format is Ultra HD Blu-ray, not shortened, not called 4K, Ultra HD Blu-ray. That is a brand new disc format. It's as different as Blu-ray is from DVD, right? They're the same size, they're both shiny discs, but DVD was a completely separate format from Blu-ray. Ultra HD Blu-ray is a completely separate format from Blu-ray. So that's really important to know, because on Ultra HD Blu-ray discs, they will be in 4K resolution. Ultra HD resolution is the correct term. They will, almost all, will have high dynamic range, which is a new feature that on regular Blu-rays, the dynamic range went from 0 to 100 nits. On Ultra HD Blu-rays, it could go from 0 to 10,000 nits. That is high dynamic range. You will find that on Ultra HD Blu-rays. You will not find it on regular Blu-rays. You will find more titles on Ultra HD Blu-ray with Atmos or DTS-X audio. There is no reason why regular Blu-rays cannot have those audio formats, but many studios are choosing to only put the Atmos or DTS-X soundtrack on the Ultra HD Blu-ray version, but that's just an option. You will also find wider color on Ultra HD Blu-rays. And let's see, anything else there? That's about it. Wider color, high dynamic range, 4K resolution, but it's a totally new format. If you take an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc and put it into a regular Blu-ray player, it will not play. It'll be the same thing as if you tried to take a Blu-ray disc and put it into a DVD-only player. It will not play. You could take a regular Blu-ray and put it into an Ultra HD Blu-ray player. That'll play. It'll go forward. You can take a DVD and put it into a Blu-ray player, or take a DVD and put it into an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, and it'll play. You can go forward, but you can't go back. You can't take an Ultra HD Blu-ray and play it in a regular Blu-ray player. So what is a 4K upscaling Blu-ray player? That is not an Ultra HD Blu-ray player. You can't take an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc, put it in a 4K upscaling Blu-ray player, and have it play. Nothing will play. It'll just refuse to play anything at all. It's not a compatible format. A 4K upscaling Blu-ray player is taking a regular Blu-ray disc or a DVD, and it is making up extra pixels that are not on the disc so that it fills all the pixels on your 4K television. Your 4K television has 3840 by 2160, all right? There are 3,840 pixels going across, 2,160 pixels going down, and that is exactly how many pixels are on that television, and every single one of those pixels needs something to do. If you feed it what would normally come off of a regular Blu-ray disc, 1080p, that's 1920 by 1080, if you feed that signal to a 4K television, your television will upscale it. It'll say, all right, you haven't given me enough pixels for me to put something on every pixel that I have, so I'm going to make up what I need to make up so that every pixel is filled. Well, a 4K upscaling Blu-ray player will do that process before it gets to the television, but it's the same thing. It's taking what's on the disc, which is 1920 by 1080, and making up a bunch of extra pixels so that it's outputting 3840 by 2160, which your 4K television then just shows. But all you've done is change the location of where those pixels are being made up. They're being made up in the player now instead of being made up at the television itself. It's not the same thing as an Ultra HD Blu-ray, where on the disc, the physical disc, there are 3840 by 2160 pixels, and that gets put out of an Ultra HD Blu-ray player to your 4K television with additional things like wider color and high dynamic range. So, if you get a 4K upscaling Blu-ray player, it is not the same thing at all as getting an Ultra HD Blu-ray player and physical Ultra HD Blu-ray discs. I know they both say 4K. I know they're often listed together on the same page on a website, but they are not the same thing. I hope that clears it up. I think it's worth going Ultra HD Blu-ray. I love them. Not even so much for the 4K resolution, but for the high dynamic range and the wider color. I think those are the things that are really worth it. Of course, you need a 4K high dynamic range television to see those things. So those are the benefits and the differences between them. Alrighty, so that'll be it for this week, which means we still have on our list, we have Nick B, we have Neil H, and we have Bryan R. That is everybody who's left on our topic list. I did get some questions that came in Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday now throughout this week, so we'll talk to you next week about those questions. We do answer questions here. If you want your question answered, you send it to question@avrant.com. That's our email address. So thank you so much to Lee Overstreet for being our guest co-host this week and making sure we do have an episode to put out. I want to thank our listeners of the week. If you want to donate to the podcast via PayPal, come to our website, avrant.com. Over on the right-hand side, it says support AVRant. For the folks who did that, we'll get your names mentioned next week when Tom is back. You can donate via Patreon. That's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. We have 81 patrons over there, including Bryan W. So thanks so much for your financial support. And we want to thank James C., who went beyond his trifecta. He donated on PayPal. He is a Patreon supporter. He talked us up to Accessories for Less when he bought some KEF LS50 speakers. And on top of all that, he gave Lee a birthday present in the form of an Amazon gift card. So thanks so much, James, for doing all that. On behalf of Tom Andry, I am Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.